welcome to a special edition of VSiN Tonight, the bracket betting edition. Of course, the normal stars of VSiN Tonight are with me, Matt Youmans and Wes Reynolds. Going to have Johnny Avello here in just 1 second. Daniel Alvari is going to join us as well to help break down the women's bracket. Gentlemen, it's going to be a wild 3 hours here. We're going to break down every single game in the big dance. But before we do that, let's bring in, whenever you have a gambling Hall of Famer on the show, you have to bring in Johnny Avello, of course, with DraftKings. Johnny, let's get right to it and what the books are looking at here. I know every year it gets bigger out here in Las Vegas. What is the sense this year? Because I get the feeling that the favorites, normally you're probably going to take a lot of action on the favorites. Do you think some longer shots are going to see more action this year with the tournament feeling more wide open than ever before?
You know, for me, it's a little bit different. When I worked in the retail environment, it seemed like we took a lot of chalk money. Of course, there were some that took a chance with some of the dogs, because of the hype out there, how well the dogs do in the first round or so. On the digital environment, though, we have a lot of our players taking shots at dogs early. Yesterday, when we first opened the numbers, they went up a little. It seemed to be more favorite action. But today, second day of wagering, it's all underdog action. And so I think that trend will continue from what I see on our platform. Every week in the NFL, every week in college basketball, we have people taking shots at money line pluses and trying to get more back for what they're putting up.
Johnny, can you, single out some of the teams that have been most popular with the bettors up to this point?
Yeah, there's some games that I noticed have moved quite a bit. Louisiana against Tennessee. We opened up Tennessee 14. That line's down to 10.5. Now, there's some reasons. Louisiana didn't play any quality teams this year, but Tennessee has really played poorly down the stretch. And, they have their guard, Ziegler, out. So, that's the reason for that move. Another one was Kansas opened 23.5. We were higher on the first tick yesterday. Now we're down to 20.5. And Howard hasn't been in a tournament for like 30 years. So, that's dogs do get played, like I said, on our network. And that's what we're seeing mostly, except for the short favorites. Some of the short favorites are getting played.
John, in terms of futures liability that not only you have throughout the season, but maybe what you've taken since the draw has come out, where do you guys stand in terms of teams that might hit you a little bit if they win at all?
Houston's going to ding us, Wes, a little bit. We took a big pop on them, $1 million to win $9 million back quite a few months ago. Now we've gotten off that some, but it's still lingering. UCLA's been taking money. Duke, for the past month, I would say Duke's probably the team that's taken more action than any other team over the past 3 or 4 weeks. And then UConn was also one, but we've kind of in a spot right now where we don't get hurt too bad with them. But we took some really good plays between yesterday and today. Virginia, 10K to win $550,000. UCLA, 10K to win $120K. Baylor, 10K to win $220,000. And Marquette, 15K to win $375,000. So, they're still betting the futures. They will continue to do so over the next 3 weeks.
All right, Johnny, buckle up. It's going to be a wild ride, as it always is each and every March. I know you guys are going to be busy at DraftKings. Enjoy the March Madness as it begins in earnest tomorrow night. And, gentlemen, that's where I really want to start here because, again, we're going to have the first four. We're going to have those playing games, if you will, with the 16s doing battle here with Southeast Missouri State against Texas A&M, against Corpus Christi here. So, Matt, let me start off with you. The battle of 16s. We've seen a 16 beat a 1 now. I don't know if either one of these two teams would have that opportunity, whoever moves on. How do you see this one playing out?
Southeast Missouri State out of the Ohio Valley. A conference is down this year. The Red Hawks have two good guards, Philip Russell and Chris Harris. I think they can hang in this game. I've got Texas A&M Corpus Christi a 1.5 better, 13-1 in the past 14 games. Islanders were in this tournament last year. They lost by 9 to Texas Southern in the play-in. I'm going to take the points here with Southeast Missouri
And I know, Wes,
Redhawks.
I'm sure that Alabama isn't necessarily fearful of either one of these 16s, but how do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, I have Corpus Christi actually a little bit higher at about 3.5. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait and see if maybe they get behind a little bit early and then try to take this in game. Nothing pre-flop for me. I think Texas A&M Corpus Christi advances. They were the better team. They were the best team in the Southland Conference. Steve Lutz is the head coach, former Matt Painter assistant at Purdue. So if you've watched Purdue, you know what they like to run, a lot of motion, a lot of man-to-man defense. If this comes down to foul shooting, by the way, Texas A&M Corpus Christi, the best foul shooting team in the NCAA tournament, 80%.
Okay, and very quickly, and Wes, I heard you mention this morning with Gil. Traditionally, you've seen these 16s against ones. These numbers have come down, right? They used to be 30, 35-point spreads, and now you're seeing inside of 20.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that just shows you not only the parity in college basketball, part of it is the early entry for a lot of the blue bloods. They don't keep kids 4 years anymore. And also the fact that the NIL allows, teams to keep different guys, maybe not so much at this lower major level that we're seeing in this game, but yeah, you don't see it anymore. The first time I ever came out to Las Vegas was the late 90s, and I think it was Kansas against like Florida A&M or somebody from the MEAC, and they were laying like 35.5. You don't see that anymore. Duke one time laid, I think, 46 to Florida A&M and won by 41, didn't cover. So you don't see a lot of these big spreads that you will, like in the women's tournament. You'll see 35, 40 plus, but you just don't see that in the men's tournament anymore.
And Matt, do you think that is a true sign of parity? Really, that we're seeing the odds now, again, come down by 10 points or more from the 30, 35 days inside of 20?
Yeah, that's a long discussion, but I'll put it this way. The top teams in college basketball are not as dominant as they used to be. You don't have you don't have the stars sticking around for 3-4 years like you used to, Dave. And I think that's a big reason why the teams at the bottom of the field are closer to the teams at the top.
All right, let's get to the other game on Tuesday. That will be Pittsburgh, the battle of 11 seeds here. Pittsburgh against Mississippi State, and obviously the winner will play Iowa State in the Midwest region. This one feels like a pretty intriguing matchup. Wes, let me start off with you. How do you see the Panthers against the Bulldogs?
Yeah, these are two teams that come off blowouts in the conference tournament. Duke ran Pittsburgh 96-69. Mississippi State got obliterated by Alabama on Friday afternoon, couldn't hit a shot, 72-49. When you look at Pitt, they had two chances, guys, to win the ACC outright. Lost at Notre Dame in Mike Bray's finale in South Bend, and then lost to Miami in the season finale. So you wonder if they can recover from that a little bit. And then Mississippi State, when you look at these guys, they like to shoot from the two because they can't shoot the three. They are dead last in all of college basketball in three-point shooting, 26.6%. So they like to get it to the rim with Tolu Smith, their big 7-footer. Best defense, though, or one of the best defenses in the country, 6th in adjusted defensive efficiency. So when in doubt, when you have a game that's kind of a coin flip game like this one, I go with the better defensive team. I like Mississippi State to advance.
Yeah, but the three-point shooting is going to be a problem. Also, this game being in Dayton, I think it was more suitable for Pittsburgh. I think you would have more fans from Pittsburgh making the trip over to Dayton for this game. Similar to the other Southeast Missouri, Texas A&M, Corpus Christi game we talked about. I don't have a strong opinion on this, but I would play the dog here. I'd take the points with Pitt.
All right, let's go to the other 16 and 16. That's Fairleigh Dickinson. FDU are going to take on Texas Southern here. This will be Wednesday at 6:40 p.m. Eastern time. The winner to get number 1 Purdue in that region. Matt, how do you see this one playing out for the battle of 16s?
Fairleigh Dickinson's the lowest rated team in the field.
Ooh.
And that's why I played Texas Southern here -2. And it's not like Texas Southern is some kind of juggernaut, Dave. That's not the case. But facing the weakest team in the field, I think, is a break for the SWAC champs. And Texas Southern's been here before. Like I mentioned last year, beat Texas A&M Corpus Christi 76-67 in this game. Played a tougher non-conference schedule. I'm a little bit surprised this number is not a tick or two higher, but I laid 2 with the Tigers of Texas Southern.
Yeah, death taxes and Texas Southern going to Dayton here in the NCAA tournament. 2 years in a row, would have been 3 if not for the COVID year 2021 where they had to play in Assembly Hall. But this is a team that is used to this spot in Texas Southern. And the fact that they are below 500, the only team below 500 in the NCAA tournament in the field of 68, and they're laying points. I think that tells you the market likes who they like, and they like Texas Southern, and so do I.
All right, the other 11 versus 11, Nevada against Arizona State. The winner gets the Horned Frogs of TCU. That'll be Wednesday, 9:10 p.m. Eastern game here. Matt, what about Nevada? I think a lot of people go, oh, well, they weren't playing maybe their best basketball down the stretch.
No, they lost 3 straight and backed into the tournament. Lost to Wyoming, UNLV, and San Jose State. 3 teams not in the field, and that's why we didn't think the Wolfpack would make this 68-team tournament. Now, sometimes when a team gets in and people complain, they shouldn't be in the tournament, that might be a team you want to back. Well, not here. I played Arizona State -1. You got 2 players who transferred from Nevada to Arizona State, Desmond Cambridge, Warren Washington. A lot of good storylines in this game. I'm going to go with Bobby Hurley's team. Sun Devils have been in this spot before in Dayton, and I think they're in better form right now. ASU -1 is my play.
Dave, don't turn your back on the Wolfpack, as they say, and I'm not. I'm going to back the Wolfpack here because I like to back the team. And if there was one team here where I think a lot of people are like, well, how the hell did they get in?
Right.
I think it was Nevada, even though I didn't have a problem with them getting in over Rutgers based on Rutgers' weak strength of schedule. But I like Nevada. I think that they get a reprieve. You know, they got ousted in the first round of the Mountain West tournament by San Jose State. They get a second chance here, and I think that they're going to take advantage of it. Give me Steve Alford and the Wolfpack.
All right, that is the first games that we'll see, the first 4 on Tuesday. When we come back, let's take a look at those 1 versus 16 matchups, the way we see them right now, and see if maybe some of these dogs can actually at least cover, which has been a pretty good trend as in recent times would have it here in the NCAA tournament. Just getting it started, a special edition of VSiN Tonight. Back in a moment. Back on this special edition of VSiN Tonight. Dave Ross here alongside Wes Reynolds and Matt Youmans at Circus Sportsbook. Gentlemen, let's get to the 1 and 16s. Now, we've only seen 1-16 beat a 1. Sorry, UVA. But when you lost, you came back the next year and won the national championship. Is there a possibility that one of these 16s pushes the 1 and at least feels like I might want to at least take the points here in this situation? Let's start off in the West with Howard, my old stomping grounds there in Washington, D.C., against Rock Chalk Jayhawk. Wes, would you consider taking the points and the Bison?
I would actually lean that way. And Howard, by the way, the best team in D.C., I think the only team from D.C. in this year's NCAA tournament. First time since 1992 for Howard, who coincidentally enough played Kansas. We mentioned how these 1s and 16s, the gaps used to be a lot wider. Lost by 33, 100-67 back in 1992. And then the line now is, just a little bit over 20.
Right.
So, look, Howard is a team. If you want to bet Kansas, this is maybe a live opportunity game because I could see this where, like, Howard is up 10 minutes into the game. And it's like, oh, my God, we got a 1 seed in danger. And then all of a sudden, water kind of finds its level. If you look at Howard, they like to get to the rim. I think they're 7th highest in rim rate per shot quality. And they also shot the 3 very well in conference play, 43%, best in the MEAC. They run a lot of Princeton motion. Kenny Blakeney, former Duke player, is the head coach at Howard. Kansas, Bill Self is going to be back. Let's see if they rest Kevin McCullough here in this 1-16 because they would have an 8-9 with a pretty tricky opponent in the second round with Arkansas or Illinois. So Howard, I would lean with them at the number, getting about, 22.5. I think that was the opener, but
it's come down a little bit now to 20.5.
Yeah, 20.5. Yeah, so, people have that idea. People are hip to the 16s, I think, competing more with the 1s. So lean to Howard. Not a bet yet for me, though, at all.
There's a lot of 21s out there in the market. So if you want Howard, you can get 21. First trip for the Bison to the tournament since 1992, Dave. That's a long time. The Cowboys had even won a Super Bowl since then.
I knew that was coming.
Cheap shot. Come on.
Howard opened the season with a 32-point loss at Kentucky, but this is not a bad team. Like Wes indicated, really good 3-point shooting team. When I'm looking for a dog that can cover a big number, I want a team that can shoot the 3. And the Bison can do that. Elijah Hawkins, a sophomore guard, shoots 47% from 3. Give me the points with the dog here. I think Howard can stick with a Kansas team that should be more focused on the second-round matchup.
Yeah, and Kansas, by the way, coming off that terrible loss in the Big 12 final, loss by 20 to Texas, but they do get their head coach back, as Wes talked about. Let's go to the other number 1 seed. This would be Houston taking on number 16, Northern Kentucky. Now, Marcus Sasser, we don't know about his availability as of yet. We assume he might be able to go. Again, didn't play in the final, and it really showed against Memphis. Now they're going to lay 19.5. Matt, let me start off with you on this one. How concerned would you be if you're a Houston backer and you need your best player, you would think, to cover big numbers?
Yeah, Kelvin Sampson said that Marcus Sasser should be 100% by Thursday, but do you hold him out of this game anyway? You're not going to need him against Northern Kentucky, and I think that's the hesitation you would have here if you're going to lay the points, because the Cougars did not look very good Sunday against Memphis without Sasser out there. I'm going to look under the total in this one. It's a low total, 123. The Norse, out of the Horizon League, allow 63.6 points per game. I think this is going to be an ugly, low-scoring game. Wes, no reason for Houston to keep the pedal down when they get up big. But I really don't have any interest in the dog. I'm just going to play this under.
Yeah, when you look at the style standpoint here, Northern Kentucky, the Norse, third time they've appeared in about 6 years in the NCAA tournament, they run a lot of zone. But the thing about running a lot of zone, yeah, you can slow the game down, but you're going to give up a ton of offensive rebounds. Houston, by the way, number 4 in the country in terms of offensive rebound percentage at 37.1%. I don't know how Northern Kentucky is going to score very much here, basically, with the slow tempo. And plus, as good as Houston is, overloading on the ball side on defense. So I think Houston, if they're interested, they can cover the number. But how interested are they going to be? Do you rest Marcus Sasser? Maybe give him a few minutes just to get him back playing, but don't, stress him for 100% because you got an 8-9 opponent in the next round with Iowa and Auburn.
Hey, Dave, I'll add one thing to this. Number 1 seeds went 1-10 against the spread in the first 3 rounds last year.
Oh, not good. What's a Norse? I have no idea. Number 2, Arizona against number 15, Princeton. Now, I wonder, Wes Reynolds, is this still your father's Princeton offense? I mean, it feels like they're a little bit more faster paced than they were back in the day. Could that pose problems going up against an Arizona team that we know likes to get up and down?
It very much could be. But Princeton, look, they like to shoot the three.
Yeah.
35th in the country in terms of highest three-point rate, also 10th in terms of offensive turnover rate. So they don't give the ball away. They play very smart. They don't foul a lot on defense, and they rebound and don't give up a lot of offensive rebounds. The problem is now you're playing against Umar Ballo and Tubelis as well. So you're playing against a couple big guys that can absolutely get offensive rebounds. I just think that the size and the pace eventually is going to be hard for Princeton really to keep up. I think Princeton hangs in early, maybe even hangs in the first half, and then eventually this gets away from them. I'd be looking at the over here at 154 and a half.
I like the dog a little bit here, talking about the Princeton Tigers. And I think when you look at Arizona, the Wildcats going to be a matchup problem for a lot of teams they face in the tournament because Tubelis, who's 6'11", Ballo, who's a 7-footer, and Wes mentioned that last year the Ivy League champ was Yale, faced Purdue and got pounded by the size advantage of the Boilermakers. I think a similar thing could happen here, but Arizona, I think, is a little bit too soft, and their guards are too erratic, and they're coming off an emotional Pac-12 tournament championship against UCLA. That game meant everything to Arizona. A bit of a letdown spot. I'm going to play the dog here, but also when you play the dog, you have the option. Maybe play a half unit in the first half and a half unit for the game in case the game gets out of control in the second half. I think Princeton has a better shot to stick close to Arizona in the first half.
All right, I think you guys are both leaning towards maybe some in-game possibilities there as well. Another 2 would be Shaka and Marquette. Used to coach my alma mater, VCU, all the way to a Final Four back in the day. Now against Vermont, and we know the Catamounts' good history if you remember what they did to Syracuse many moons ago. So, Matt, let me start with you here. Could there be another 15-2 upset brewing here with the Catamounts?
Well, I like Vermont. I think this is a team, when you're looking for Cinderellas, Vermont's one of those teams that could do it. I don't think Vermont team is as good as some of the past additions made the tournament. The Catamounts won 23 games. They start 4 guards. They shoot a lot of threes. They got 2 players, Dylan Penn and Finn Sullivan, who are capable, I think, of keeping them in the game here against Marquette. This is another spot where I think it could get away from the dog in the second half. But again, Marquette's coming off a Big East tournament title win. And you see a lot of times the teams that come off these Power 5 tournament title wins, they're a little bit flat in the opening game of the tournament. So based on that, give me the points with the Catamounts.
I actually did bet Vermont a little bit at 12 and some 11.5. This is a team that doesn't turn the ball over very much, 9th best in the country, 14.2%. also shoot very well at the rim, 55.5%. So I think Marquette could be a little bit flat here, maybe taking these guys lightly. And Marquette has kind of done that in Big East competition, not covering against the patsies of the league.
Very quickly, gentlemen, let's sneak one more in here. Let's get to Texas, number 2, Shaka's old team there. But a lot better days right now, it feels like, for Texas, despite the issues at head coach. And now they're going to take on the number 15th ranked Colgate team coming in here. Huge underdog spot here for Colgate. Wes, any chance for a live dog scenario, at least taking the points?
I want to think so. I think Matt and I are going to be opposite on this one, though. I mean, I like what Colgate runs, that ball screen motion offense, but I just think Texas has way too much athleticism for these guys, and maybe they're out to prove a point, especially Rodney Terry, that he should have that head coaching job in Austin.
Yeah, I think Texas proved its point against Kansas, and I think Colgate could be live to cover this number. I took 14 here. This is one of my better bets. After crushing Kansas in the Big 12 tournament, Texas does appear to be in peak form. I don't think you can overlook the Patriot League champs here. Colgate's 20-1 in its past 21 games, making its 4th consecutive NCAA trip, and the Raiders hung tough in the previous trips against Wisconsin, Arkansas, and Tennessee. They got 5 double-figure scorers who all shoot the 3. They can spread the floor. Give me the points. Give me the 14 with Colgate.
So Donald Foyle is not playing for Colgate in this game. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Just check.
They could use him, though, I think, against the Longhorns.
Remember when they beat Syracuse about 2 decades ago. All right, when we come back, let's continue in the South here. We'll keep marching on until we get through the entire brackets, every single game of every single bracket. Come on back, a special edition of VSiN Tonight. Rolling on this special edition of VSiN Tonight. Let's get back to the West. Number 2 UCLA against number 15 UNC Asheville. Again, a big spread, as you would imagine. UCLA a little bit banged up, Matt Youmans. So don't know about the problems if it's going to be without 2 starters. Maybe not a problem in this first-round matchup against 2 first 15.
Well, it could be a problem if you want the Bruins to cover the spread. I'm going to go with the Bulldogs here. I'll take the points. And right now, 18 at a bunch of places. Drew Pember, 6'10 senior, 21.2 points a game, 9.4 rebounds, Big South Player of the Year. Pember attempted and made more free throws than any other player in the country. 262 of 314 at the line, 83%. Tyjon Jones, a senior guard, 15 points, 45% from 3, 98 made threes in 34 games. This Asheville team can score, and they can hang within this number against a shorthanded UCLA team. I'll take the points with the Bulldogs.
This would be a split first half and game for me, plus 10.5 in the first half, plus 18 on Asheville for everything that Matt said. Adem Bona, Mick Cronin said he might be available for this game. We know, of course, Jaden Clark is not going to be, but Pember, they can use him all over the floor. He shoots threes, he gets to the rim. And UCLA, sometimes they don't blow out these lesser teams. You kind of saw that a little bit in the non-conference.
All right, well, we got through the 1-16s and the 2 first 15s. Let's get to the meat here in the South and what really feels like an intriguing matchup, a border war 8-9 matchup in the South between Maryland and West Virginia. So, Wes Reynolds, is it going to be Morgantown with those muskets, or will it be the Terrapins rolling on?
Maryland is about the most erratic team in the country. When you look at Eric Haslam, guest on this network at Haslam Metrics, it ranks them as the most inconsistent team in the country, number 363 at 363. This is a team we know that does not win on the road very much. They won 1 Big Ten game away from home, and that was against the worst team in the conference, Minnesota. So, West Virginia, I think it's going to be probably a very low-scoring game, because it's the early game, too. I think it's the first game of the first session on Thursday.
It is.
So I think that there's going to be a lot of nerves here. I lean West Virginia on the side, but the angle that I think bettors ought to look at, first half under. Because I think being the first game, you're going to see nerves. You're already seeing it get bet down a little bit. I still like it a little bit at 64.5. It opened at 65.5.
I like unders and underdogs, Dave, and I'm going to play this one under the total. I think both, like Wes said, you're going to see this game get off to a slow start. Both these teams are erratic offensively. My power ratings come out to West Virginia -2. That's the number, so I don't see an edge here with the side. I can't find the situational advantage. Let's play this under, and we've seen the under move down about 2 points from the opener.
Yeah, I think you guys are spot on. Certainly with that first game really on Thursday to kick off March Madness, could be a little bit of tension and good defenses as well. Let's get to the 5-12 matchup in the South region, San Diego State against Charleston here. And Matt, again, we see it every year. It feels like a 5 beats a 12. is clearly we're going to possibly have, I know it's going to be a trendy underdog pick. Is this the 5 that you identify as possibly in trouble?
No, I think San Diego State's going to find a way to survive here. 5.5 is a fair number. That's about what my power rating comes out to for the game. Charleston, I'm not sure how good Charleston is. The 31-3 record is impressive. Pat Kelsey's a good coach of the Cougars. They have 5 double-figure scorers, 3 seniors, 2 sophomores. So this kind of fits the mold of a team you think could pull an upset. I'm going to go opposite of what I usually do here. I think San Diego State's too good defensively, got too many athletes, too long. Going to be a step up in class here for Charleston. I'm going to say San Diego State gets the win and cover.
The Mountain West, by the way, 0-4 last year in the first round, 1-11 in the first round since 2016. That's baked in here. I think the Mountain West actually was a much better league this year than it's been in previous years. And I like the Aztecs as well because if you watch Charleston, they're a team that likes to get out and transition. They're 5th in transition rate in the entire country. But you're against the San Diego State defense that leads the nation in terms of transition rate around only 19.8%. So they're going to have trouble, I think, against this Aztecs defense. Brian Detcher has positions 1 through 5. They switch everything. So you have a lot of guys that are long and rangy and can guard multiple positions. That's kind of a staple of the San Diego State program. And I think the way to beat San Diego State defensively is to run a lot of pick and roll, kind of like New Mexico. That's the blueprint that Boise State followed late in the season. Charleston doesn't really run a lot of pick and roll, and they take a lot of threes, but if you look at the percentage, they're like 210th in the country in three-point percentage, even though they take the ninth in three-point rate. So Charleston played in that CAA, the Colonial, where you got some weaker defenses and you got some defenses that'll run a little bit more against you. San Diego State, really athletic defensively. I think they're going to be able to shut these guys down, and I would be laying it with the Aztecs.
All right, Steve Fisher to Brian Dutcher, and they keep rolling there with San Diego State. Let's get to the 4-13 matchup, and I know I could just tell the way the numbers moved early. Feels like Furman is live against Virginia. Now, again, Virginia came up short against Duke in that ACC final. So, Wes, let me start off with you there. Virginia, sometimes it seems like early outs, or they can go all the way to the national final here. What do you make of Virginia this year?
Yeah, this is one of the first games I actually bet, and I do like Furman here. And it got put in the early window on Thursday, and I don't want to be conspiracy theory, but I think that the networks, they love to have an upset in that first window, to advertise, oh, it's the madness, baby. We've got a big upset, and we got a big-name team going out, namely Virginia. And I think Furman absolutely could take them out here. This is a senior-laden team. They got 2 fifth-year seniors in this program, Jalen Slauson, who is the SoCon Player of the Year, and Mike Bothwell. And this is a team, Furman, that's always been knocked out in like the SoCon tournament final that wins 24, 25 games. Haven't been to the NCAA tournament. Bob Ritchie finally gets them there in the 6th season. Also won a share of the regular season title. Virginia, you know what Tony Bennett runs. They run that pack line defense, which is protect the rim at all costs and allow you to shoot threes. Furman, 13th highest rate in the nation, 46.4% of their shots are threes. They run a lot of Princeton offense as well, so you get a lot of back cuts. And I think Virginia, like you saw in the Duke game in the ACC tournament final, they're going to miss Ben Vanderplas, and they're going to miss his rebounding, and they're going to miss his defense. Furman, by the way, number 1 in the nation in two-point percentage, 59.1%. This is a recipe for upset. Paladins not only cover, but win outright.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite bets, too. Furman plus 5.5. A lot of the reasons Wes mentioned there. I think this is a tough matchup for Virginia because everybody who takes the 4 for the Paladins can shoot the 3. And you have a senior guard, Mike Bothwell, who needs 10 points to reach 2,000 for his career. You have everything fits the formula here for an upset. And by the way, the Paladins making their first appearance in this tournament since 1980. And I think they pulled an upset. They're going to shoot the 3, and they're going to shoot down the Cavs. Take the points, 5.5, a little bit on the money line with Furman.
All right, yeah, I'll be curious to see where that number goes before we get to tip in that one on Thursday. Let's go one more here in the South region for this segment. Creighton against NC State. West, you said don't turn your back on the Wolfpack. What about this Wolfpack? Because, again, out early in the ACC tournament, but back in here, and now Creighton maybe a little bit, I'd say a slight disappointment in the Big East tournament. Wes, how do you see this one playing out?
I am turning my back on the Wolfpack in this one, though. I really like Creighton, and we'll get to them later. I think this team is actually going to make a run, and they were a disappointment. because I think they were being touted as a potential Final Four team. And then what happened? They started out 6-0, and then they lose 6 straight in December. Ryan Kalkbrenner, by the way, their big guy, did miss 3 of those games, to be fair. But I think they kind of found themselves. Now, they come in off a very bad performance. They lost on Friday night in the Big East semifinals by 22 to Xavier, and they were down by actually more than that. But this is a Creighton team. They're one of 10 teams, and I'll bring this up later in the show, that if you combine the Ken Pom adjusted offensive efficiency and defensive efficiency, and that number's under 50, every national champion since 2002, except for one, UConn in 2014, has been under 50. So Creighton reaches that parameter. They're a team that shoots the ball very well. They were the best defense in the Big East. NC State likes to press a lot, but I think you've got really good guards here that are tough to press. So I think this could get ugly, actually, for NC State.
Yeah, sometimes when a team's off a bad performance in a conference tournament, that could be a good thing. And I think it could be a good thing for the Blue Jays here. I like this Creighton team to actually go relatively deep in the bracket. Like Wes mentioned, the Ken Pomeroy ratings, if you look at offensive and defensive efficiency, Creighton ranks in the top 30 in both categories. And that's typically what it takes to qualify when you're looking at teams that can win a national championship. NC State blown out by Clemson twice late in the season. This is one of the rare favorites I like on the board. I like Creighton.
Very quickly, gentlemen, before we take a commercial break here, Matt, when you look at Creighton overall and you say, well, okay, I think they can make a deep run, we'll get your official predictions here to come out of the South. What is it? Was it just the injuries? Is that why there was inconsistency there with Creighton, or is this now?
Early in the season?
Yeah.
Oh, Creighton was riddled by injuries, and that's why the Blue Jays got off track. But, they got on track again after the first of the year, and I think we're more of the team we expected to see in the preseason.
And you're incorporating a new transfer. Baylor Shireman transferred from South Dakota State, who made the tournament last year. So you got to incorporate him in the offense. So sometimes you work through those things early in the season.
And maybe those injuries help you out now. You get some different guys in that rotation now. So maybe this is the best version of Creighton to come. All right, when we come back, your official picks in the South as we finish up that bracket next here on VSiN Tonight. Rolling along this special edition of VSiN Tonight, Dave Ross alongside Matt Youmans and Wes Reynolds. Gentlemen, I am fascinated when I look at the 3-14 matchup, not so much for the 14, UC Santa Barbara, but Baylor, because I don't know what to make of the Baylor Bears, either in this game or long-term. Matt Youmans, are you a believer? Because they played in the best conference in the Big 12, but they feel like the team that nobody talks about because we all talk about Kansas and Texas. What do you make of Baylor?
Well, you're not talking about Baylor because they got blown out by Iowa State and beaten by the Cyclones twice late in the season and did not play well. You're talking about a team that's stumbling into the tournament. That's the Bears. And they've got one of the best backcourts in the country, which really surprises me that they played this poorly late in the season. I'm not sure if they can get it back together. But this first-round matchup against UC Santa Barbara, I'm not crazy about the dog. I will take the points with the Gauchos, even though I think Santa Barbara's had better teams. They got 2 good players here. A.J. Mitchell, a sophomore guard, Miles Norris, a senior forward who's 6'10". Both guys, Mitchell averages 16.4 and Norris 14.1. So these guys can score. They can hang with Baylor inside. We haven't seen the Bears make this transformation into an elite team like a lot of the prognosticators thought was going to happen, I think, in the last 6 weeks when they got fully healthy. This is not one of my favorite plays, but I'll take the 10.5 with Santa Barbara.
I actually did take the Gauchos at 11.5 in this game. And it's more of a play against Baylor just based on the fact that, look, they've got 3 good isolation guards, Cryer, Flagler, and George, that can all score. But the one thing that this team cannot do is this team cannot defend. This has been a really disappointing team. Scott Drew has had way better defensive teams. And especially they can't defend in the interior. They are 356 nationally per synergy in terms of defending at the rim. Meanwhile, UC Santa Barbara, 14th in PPP, that's points per possession, at the rim. UCSB, Matt mentioned Mitchell, who's a sophomore. He's also surrounded by 4 seniors. So this is a very experienced team. And this is also a UCSB team that they can control tempo. If you look, 312th in the country out of 363 in average possession length. So they're not going to go up and down. They're going to force Baylor to play defense for 30 seconds. I think that's bad news for Baylor because they've been getting cooked at the rim. And Baylor also plays 2 guys that really can only get offense off garbage. You don't run offense for Jonathan Chachwa or Flo Famba. These are guys that, they get putbacks, basically.
Right.
That you don't run anything for these guys. So they're very limited offensively. Langston Love, their freshman wing, has been hurt. So I think the Chos are going to stay in this game.
The Chos.
Great job on those pronunciations,
That's
Wes.
fantastic.
I almost was going to say JTT because I didn't know if I could do Chachwa.
The Baylor guards have been cold shooting lately, too. And that's something to keep in mind. The hesitation I have with Santa Barbara here is Big West, not that great this season, even though I'm a proponent of that conference. I don't think it was real strong at the top. By the way, DraftKings' current number is 11.
Mm-hmm.
Every half point matters. Take the 11 with the Gauchos.
Absolutely. All right, gentlemen, I went to the Utah State UNLV game here a couple weeks ago in town, and I don't think Utah State missed a shot. I was on the wrong side of that one. What about the side here is the 10-7 against Mizzou? Wes Reynolds, let me start off with you because, again, we mentioned San Diego State, maybe a better conference. If we saw them in the final, give San Diego State all they can handle in the first half before the Aztecs beat them in the second. What do you make of Utah State? Here's the 10 against the 7 Mizzou.
Yeah, there's always a couple coin flip games in the NCAA tournament, and this is certainly one of them for me. I lean Utah State, and they're a little bit more of an analytics darling than I think Missouri is really. Utah State runs good stuff. They're very well coached. Ryan Odom may be moving on to a bigger job in the offseason, the son of Dave Odom, the former Wake Forest coach. So this is a team that, doesn't really beat themselves. They run really good motion. They have a lot of sets. Odom's got a deep playbook. One of the things you worry about Missouri is that they do give up a fair amount of offensive rebounds, even though Utah State not the greatest of offensive rebounding team. Missouri, I thought, was a big-time overachiever this year. And credit Dennis Gates. His first year at Cleveland State, goes ahead and gets this team to the NCAA tournament, gets them a 7 seed to boot. Very efficient offensive team, doesn't really turn the ball over very much, and is 5th in turnover rate in the country. But I think Utah State will take care of the basketball better than most of those opponents.
Yeah, I updated all my power ratings, and I emphasize how a team plays over the last 6 weeks instead of the full season. I think the last 6 weeks are more important. I've actually got Missouri a 2-point favorite here. Now, my numbers might be wrong, but I agree with what was said about Ryan Odom, outstanding coach. And Utah State actually went into the Mountain West tournament game against San Diego State, 4th in the nation in three-point shooting percentage at 40.1%. But against the Aztecs' long athletic defenders, they shot 4 for 24 from 3. That's always going to be a problem for a team that relies on the 3-ball so much. I like Kobe Brown, Demoy Hodge. I think Missouri's got superior athletic ability here. And I'm going to take the 2 points with the Tigers.
Yeah, again, one of those things where the 7 is actually the underdog here, getting the 2 against Utah State, where the numbers, the seedings really don't matter much here, according to the odds makers. All right, gentlemen, it's time now, as we've kind of gone through every game so far in the South, to have you guys kind of weave your way to get to who's going to come out and represent this division, if you will, in the Final Four. Matt, let me start off with you. The number 1 seed is Alabama. Are you feeling chalky on this one?
Yeah, I hate to be the one that eats the chalk here, but when you look at the number 1 seeds that have the easiest path to Houston for the Final Four,
yeah, I
think Alabama has got the easiest path. You can say it's Alabama, you can say it's Houston, you can argue about that, but if you look at the South bracket, Arizona is the number 2 seed, Creighton is the number 6, I think are the primary threats here for Alabama, and the Tide actually match up pretty well against those teams. I've got Alabama beating West Virginia in the second round, Furman in the Sweet 16.
Wow.
And Arizona in the Elite 8. Now, I really had a problem here. I debated this a long time. Do I like Creighton? Do I like Arizona to come from the bottom half of that bracket? Mm-hmm. I end up going with Arizona because of Tubelis and Ballo, 6'11", 7-footers. I think they can give Creighton a lot of problems, but that's kind of a coin flip situation. I think Bama's road to Houston is paved, so I had to go with Bama. I wanted to fade the Tide. I really did. I thought there were going to be a lot of distractions surrounding Brandon Miller.
Yeah.
And I thought that this team would get off track. We saw the Tide fail to cover 4 games in a row after the Brandon Miller controversy hit the news. But Wes, I kind of feel like the Tide got back on track in the SEC tournament.
I do too, and I actually do have Alabama going to the Elite 8 there at the top. I think that they get by, I would say, San Diego State in the Sweet 16. San Diego State, while very good defensively, they do get in some scoring ruts. You get in scoring ruts against Alabama, who's long and rangy and can force turnovers and get up and down. All of a sudden, you're down 15, and that Aztecs are not a come-from-behind team. So I like Alabama up top. And at the bottom, let's just go to the Sweet 16. I have Creighton and Arizona at the bottom like Matt does. Matt actually saw these two teams play in person in the Maui Invitational Final. That game was won by Arizona, 81-79. Arizona got up 14 in the second half, and Creighton found their way back.
Wow.
So looking at this, Creighton, I believe, hit 10 threes in that game. Arizona only hit 5, but they out-rebounded Creighton, and that was basically the difference. I really like the Blue Jays here. Arizona, can be a little shaky defensively. And Kirk Kriisa was battling the shoulder injury in the Pac-12 tournament here at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. So Creighton, I know that they weren't that impressive, and Arizona did just win the Pac-12 tournament against a very shorthanded UCLA team in the final. But I think if Creighton gets these guys again, maybe we're going to see the Blue Jays that I think were really good to start the season, that had a lot of expectations. I think these guards are getting better. You have Kalkbrenner, you have Shireman, who has some NCAA tournament experience, a very good shooter, played for the South Dakota State team last year that fell short against Providence in the first round. So Alabama and Creighton is my Elite Eight, and I am going to say the 6-seeded Creighton Blue Jays will be representing the South region in Houston.
I believe 7-1 is what you can get right now on DraftKings if you like Wes's call there of Creighton to get out of this region. Matt, very quickly, what caught my attention there is you had Furman in the Sweet 16. So not only do you have them beating Virginia, but you think they can actually win 2 games.
Dave, I'm not going to pick the favorite to advance in every game.
Yeah.
I actually think that, we talked a lot about the Paladins, and I think they're a dangerous team here. They can knock off Virginia, and then San Diego State's got to be on upset alert. I think Furman is the threat to be the Cinderella that makes the Sweet 16.
Well, we always get 1, if not 2, if not more. So that feels like a team certainly Virginia is going to have to watch out for in that first round coming up. But Matt likes them to win 2 games here to get to that Sweet 16. All right, gentlemen, we're done with the South. When we come back, we're going east. We'll figure out who we like in those first-round matchups. Come on back. It is a special edition of VSiN Tonight. Continuing our special edition of VSiN Tonight, the bracket betting edition. Dave Ross alongside Wes Reynolds and Matt Youmans here at Circus Sportsbook. Gentlemen, great job going through the South. Now let's go east and take a look there and see what you guys think about. Let's start off with the 8-9 matchup. Memphis, Anthony Hardaway. Impressive win. I know Houston backers would say, hey, we didn't have our best player, but still, a win's a win. And now they're going to take on the 9-seed Florida Atlantic. Matt, let me start off with you. Does Penny keep it rolling with the Tigers?
Well, this is interesting. I want to get Wes's view on this game, too, because it seems like 90% of the people who are looking at this are just automatically advancing Memphis in the bracket and saying Memphis is going to knock off Purdue in the second round. Nightmare matchup for Purdue. And just totally dismissing a Florida Atlantic team that's 31-3, okay? And I think that's going to motivate the Owls. They know they're being dismissed here. And they did win at Florida in November. They played a decent schedule. They got 2 sophomore guards, John L. Davis and Elijah Martin, who are good shooters. I'm tempted to play Florida Atlantic because the narrative here that Memphis is just automatically going to coast into the second round and knock off Purdue.
This is not – oh, go ahead.
That said, when you look at the matchup, it does kind of lead you to the Tigers.
Well, it's a short
I think
number.
the situational aspects of this handicap kind of say Florida Atlantic, but when you look at the teams, you match them up on paper, I do like Memphis a little bit.
I'm surprised, Wes, the number is only 2 because of the narrative that Matt just laid out there. It does feel like everybody's back in Memphis, not just here, but to go deeper into this tournament, and yet it's only a 2-point spread.
So that's why I'm waiting to see if this goes up a little bit, like Matt said earlier, or Matt had said in previous discussions. Every half point matters, and I think it will matter here. I like the Owls, and when you look at Memphis, I understand why people are gravitating towards them. They just beat a 1 seed. Yeah, they didn't have Marcus Sasser, but they beat a 1 seed pretty convincingly. They actually beat Houston in 2 regular season meetings last year. However, this was the first time they beat Houston, who's the king daddy of the American Athletic Conference. This is the first time that they beat him for a championship. This is the first championship that Penny Hardaway has ever won. This team, I think, a little bit less talented than last year's team that had a couple one-and-dones with Jalen Duren and then Imani Bates, who's now transferred to Eastern Michigan. A lot less headaches, a lot more team-oriented on this Memphis team, and that's why I think that they've been a better team this year than they were last year. However, when you get that sense of accomplishment I think, with Memphis. When you win a championship and you got to do an immediate turnaround, Florida Atlantic, I think, might be being a little bit disrespected here because this is a team that is very good, and this is a team that can really shoot the three well. Memphis gives up a lot of three-point attempts because they kind of pack it in around the rim. FAU, 37.2%, top 30 in the country, also 32nd in two-point percentage. They have the athletes, I think, to at least run with Memphis a little bit. Now, I don't think Dusty May is going to want a track meet necessarily in his first time in the NCAA tournament, but this one I'm going to wait on a little bit. I think Memphis might be getting a little bit overpriced. Kendrick Davis, one of the better guards in the country, but still, I think they're just automatically advancing Memphis and thinking that they're going to knock out Purdue in the second round. I tend to disagree with that. I think Matt does as well. So give me FAU if this line keeps ticking up.
Yeah, and Kendrick Davis looks like an NBA guard. Tim Murray of VSiN mentioned he was going to play Memphis on the money line. I think if you can find a cheap money line price on Memphis, play it. But also, I think the public's going to bet this number up to 3 later in the week. You might be able to get the Owls plus 3.
All right, so if you like Florida Atlantic, like you guys are leaning towards, maybe you just wait a little bit and see if you can get the better of the number before we get to tip on Friday. That will be a late game, 9:20 p.m. Eastern time. Let's stay in the East, 5:12 on another network, 4 letters. Every single expert they have. They've got Duke in the Final Four. They got Duke coming out of the East. Well, they got to get through Oral Roberts first in a 5-12. I mentioned it. 5s always seem to beat a 12. We got another opportunity here. Wes Reynolds, is everybody overlooking Oral Roberts here?
I don't think so based on the market, because if you saw these numbers come out on Sunday night right after the pairings were announced, there were some 7.5s out there. Every kind of sharp bettor that I respect and follow bet 7.5 on Oral Roberts. And I was having a text conversation with a mutual friend of Matt and I's that's a pro bettor, and he kind of liked Oral Roberts initially too. And I was like, maybe wait to buy Duke here in this spot, because everybody is going to want to see, people want to see Duke get knocked out. And everybody remembers Oral Roberts a couple years ago during the COVID tournament where they were a 15 seed and they beat the 2 seed Ohio State. Max Abmas, who's still on the team, by the way, Kevin O'Banner, who's now at Texas Tech. But Oral Roberts now has a big guy in Connor Vanover, a 7'5" center. That's the matchup I want to see. Connor Vanover against Cal Filipowski and Derek Lively, 2 7-footers for Duke, and see how that works out. Statistically, if Oral Roberts, number 1 in turnover rate in the country offensively. That means, never giving the ball up. And this is a team that's won 17 in a row. Now, when they stepped up against better competition, lost by 38 to Houston, lost by 8 at St. Mary's, respectable, lost by 10 at Utah State, lost by 7 at New Mexico. I'm willing to buy Duke low here in this game. I have not bet this, but I'm seeing as low as 6 in the market. This may continue to drop if Oral Roberts gets a little trendy. I believe I think they were the only team to go undefeated in conference play this year in the Summit League.
Yeah, 18-0, but that's a bad conference. Also, Oral Roberts has the feel of like a traveling carnival, because you got the small guard, Max Amos, who averages 22.2 points a game. You got 7'5" Connor Vanover, the transfer from Arkansas, who actually can step out and hit the 3. Shoots 33% from 3. And you got a third scorer in Isaac McBride, who shoots 41% from 3. I think this is a dangerous team. Actually, lost to St. Mary's, Utah State, New Mexico. But the thing about that blowout loss to Houston that Wes mentioned, Max Amos shot 1 for 13, McBride 1 for 10, Vanover 3 for 11. Those guys had horrific shooting nights. So I think you kind of draw a line through that. That doesn't mean too much. I like Duke too. I think the Blue Devils, I've been talking about this for a few weeks, I think they're peaking. There's a lot of upside with this team. If this number is 6, if you can get 6, I think that's a cheap price here on the Blue Devils. I like them to go deep in this bracket.
And they've been doing it with defense too,
yes,
because they don't have that dead-eye shooter that they usually
have. You know what
have.
else they don't have? They don't have Coach K, and John Shire's a much better defensive coach.
He has been so far this season. Yes.
Shots fired at K. Let's get to number 4, Tennessee against number 13, Louisiana. This will be Thursday, 9:40 p.m. Eastern. The Vols, Matt, it feels like, boy, maybe a shaky 4 seed here for Tennessee coming into this tournament. What do you make of their first-round matchup here against the Raging Cajuns?
Well, there's going to be a couple different ways to look at this. I think some people are going to say, well, the price is cheap on Tennessee at this point. I lean Louisiana at the number 10.5. My number is 10, so I'm not saying there's a lot of value here. My power rating number is 10. Raging Cajuns won 26 games, beat South Alabama in the title game. They have a really good interior player, Jordan Brown, who's a 6'11 junior forward, averages about 20 points a game. The thing about Tennessee, I think a lot of people are looking to bet against the Vols, and I have too recently, and I've cashed betting against the Vols. They lost point guard Zakai Ziegler. And once he went down, you think, well, you write this team off. I think the first round is when Tennessee is going to be dangerous to bet against. After that, I'm more than willing to fade Tennessee across the board. The Vols are not going to go deep in this tournament. I'm taking the Raging Cajuns plus 10.5 here, but it's not one of my favorite plays.
I did lay Tennessee actually at 10, and I don't like to lay double-digit favorites very often in the first round of the NCAA tournament. I was willing to do so here. It's already baked in that Rick Barnes has not been the greatest spread coach, even though he's won at every program he's ever been at.
Yeah.
Never really gotten it done in March, but I think in the first round they get it done. I think the Raging Cajuns are in for a whole different level of defense here. Second best defense in the country in terms of adjusted efficiency for Tennessee. Second best effective field goal percentage. Fifth in offensive rebounding. First in three-point percentage defense, 26.2%. I think the Raging Cajuns are in for a beating here in the first round.
All right, which odds makers do you trust? Circus Sports opened at 9.5. DraftKings opened this 14.
Yeah, that was going to say, if you had Raging Cajuns at 14 and then come back to the other side, might get a nice little middle opportunity.
This is absolutely a good middle,
Yeah.
but I like the Vols here to get it done easily.
Gentlemen, it doesn't feel like that long ago we were talking about Kentucky possibly missing the NCAA tournament. Could have got as high. I was seeing some 50-1s out there. Can't get those numbers anymore. They come in as a 6 seed. They got hotter down the stretch. Now going up against Providence. Really struggled down the stretch in Big East play. Wes, let me start off with you here. Is this a problem for Big Blue, or we've kind of put those questions behind us?
Well, Big Blue is one of the ultimate high-variance teams. This is a team that could go to the Final Four or get beat in the first round.
Right.
And I really believe that with this team.
That was true last year, too, right?
Yes, and they did get beat in the first round by 15 St. Peter's. But I would look at Kentucky here, perhaps in a money line parlay with another dance partner. I think they get the win here. Providence, one of the last teams in the tournament, because they had the worst non-conference strength of schedule of any team in the Power 6 conferences in college basketball. So they're kind of tough to trust, I think, against a Kentucky team that still has played very good defense down the stretch.
Providence had a worse strength of schedule in the non-conference even than Texas A&M?
Yeah, they were the lowest because Rutgers was second lowest.
Rutgers down there, too. Okay, as far as this game, everybody looks to fade the Friars all the time. It seems like the luck factor is on their side. They find ways to win close games.
Mm-hmm.
I think the way Wes said it is right. Kentucky's going to find a way to win this game in advance, but I'm not laying the points here. I think this is one of those games that goes down to the wire. Providence plays a lot of tight games. I don't trust Kentucky. I can't lay it, so if you force me to take a side here, I'm going to take the 4 points with the Friars.
All right, very quickly, I mean, they were talking about Cal getting ousted there in Lexington. I mean, was that stuff overblown, or was it just like a struggle at the beginning of the year?
There is some tension between he and the athletic director, Mitch Barnhart. That is very real.
But Cal's also got an historically good recruiting class coming in next season, so he's going to be there for at least one more year.
So even if they do go out in the first round back-to-back, doesn't look like this would be the end of Coach Cal in Lexington. All right, we're going to put an end to the East discussion when we come back and get your final 4 predictions. Who's coming out of the East? That is next on a special edition of VSiN Tonight. Alongside 2 more experts, Matt Youmans, Wes Reynolds. Gentlemen, let's continue our discussion of the East. K-State. They were kind of like the belle of the ball there for the beginning of the year, right? Like, whoa, K-State didn't see this coming. A 3 seed right now here for the Wildcats against Montana State. Matt Youmans, they kind of weren't the same K-State down the stretch. What do you make of them now coming into the big dance?
Well, I think K-State, first of all, has got really superior talent in this matchup. You got 2 of the 5 first-team All-Big 12 players on this K-State team. Now, Dave, let's rewind the tape a year ago. At this time, a year ago, a lot of people were trying to make a case for Montana State as a live dog, as a 14 seed against Texas Tech. Final score of that game, 97-62 Texas Tech.
Whoops.
Right?
Yep.
So I'm not sure if the Bobcats are any good. That's my problem here. They're 25-9. They blew out Northern Arizona in the Big Sky title game, but Northern Arizona is terrible. So I look at the non-conference. Montana State lost to Oregon by 30, lost to Arizona by 21. I can't make a real good case here for Montana State. I'm going to leave that to Wes. If he wants to make a case for the dog, he can try it. I do like Raekwon Battle, the senior guard. He averages 17. He's a scorer. I think he can keep the Bobcats hanging around for a while. I'm not playing many favorites here, but I'll play K-State in the money line parlay or lay 8 with K-State.
I did take some 10 here and a little bit of 9 after it moved on Montana State. And look, Matt is right. They got blown out last year by Texas Tech. Now they're in the same 3-14 matchup. And yet they're only getting like 9 and now 8.5, 8. That's telling you someone is betting Montana State. And it's usually, more often than not, betting the openers are more pro bettors that have been betting this all season or some sharper bettors for whatever that's worth. That doesn't mean they're guaranteed to cash a ticket on this game, but this is a Montana State team, 44.4% in terms of free throw attempts per field goal attempts. That means they get to the foul line a lot. And I think that that's very beneficial for an underdog because stops the clock and allows you to score. This was a Montana State team that did beat Eastern Washington, who was the best team in the conference. They were the number 1 seed in the Big Sky, beat them on senior night there up in Cheney, and then won 3 in a row, had that 2 overtime crawl against Weber State that they had to get through, and they did, and then they beat Northern Arizona. K-State, Jerome Tang, look, he finally got his opportunity to be a head coach. He's been an assistant for Scott Drew, I think, the last 15 years down at Baylor, and widely known as a dude getter, a guy that's a very good recruiter, Jerome Tang, and recruited the transfer portal because 3 of their starters, Keontae Johnson from Florida, Desi Sills was at Arkansas, then was at Arkansas State. Cam Carter was at Mississippi State. So these are guys that played high major college basketball that have been very good for K-State. But I didn't like what I saw out of them in the Big 12 tournament. They kind of come stumbling in a little bit too. Lost by 8 at West Virginia. Lost by 13 to TCU in the tournament. I wonder if this team peaked a little bit early. I think this is going to be a closer game than a lot of people think.
Well, that's my concern here with K-State too, because I like to chart teams. You know, you look who's peaking early, who's peaking in March, and K-State definitely peaked early and is not playing its best basketball now.
All right, so maybe you might think about a money line situation instead of laying those points here with K-State. Let's get to what I think could be the most intriguing matchup here for the 7-10s, at least certainly in the East, and that would be Michigan State against USC. Talk about 2 teams that I've really struggled to get a handle on. Wes, I'll start off with you. What do you make of the Trojans here against Tom Izzo? Normally, you don't want to bet against Izzo in March, and right now you got to lay a small number if you want to back Michigan State, just laying the 2.
Yeah, I've had a struggle getting a handle on these 2 teams too because I think they've been very inconsistent, particularly the Spartans. They're a very good 3-point shooting team, 39.5%. The problem is they don't take enough of them. They're 297th in 3-point rate, meaning they don't take only 33% of their shots are from the 3, and they really need to shoot more from outside of there. Had some injuries. Look, they're not a team that really pressures you in the backcourt, so they don't force a lot of turnovers. This is a team with 2 senior starters, Tyson Walker and Joey Hauser, so they do have some experience. Meanwhile, USC, got healthy down the stretch because they were missing their big guy, Joshua Morgan, who's really their best defender. Drew Peterson was battling some injuries, though, in that Pac-12 tournament. It looks like he is a go. He's kind of their point forward, if you will. They run a lot of offense through him, and he's a guy who can step out and shoot. Both of these teams are very equal. USC very tough at the rim, too, only give up 42.4%. So isn't a game that I bet, but if you made me, I'd be taking the Trojans plus the deuce.
Yeah, my power ratings actually show USC is 2 points better.
Ooh.
And Michigan State's a 2-point favorite here. Now, in my bracket, I picked Tom Izzo to advance, but I would not bet that. I would not lay the 2 with the Spartans here. I think Wes would probably agree. If Michigan State's going to win this game, Tyson Walker is going to have to go off.
Yeah, no question about it. And they're going to have to shoot more threes, too, because USC gives up nothing at the rim.
That said, like it's the same thing Wes said, if you force me to play a side here from a point spread perspective, I'm going to take USC plus 2.
All right, yeah, because again, for your power ratings, you're basically getting 4 points to the better of the number here with SC. All right, gentlemen, it's time now to make your official predictions to come out of the East. Wes, let's start off with you because, again, number 1 team in this region is Purdue. Mm-hmm. I was burned by them last year. I still got
as was I.
Still scorned by last year. Wes, are we putting that behind us this year and we going boiler up?
We are going boiler up, at least for the top half of the region. I think it's them and Duke. that are in the Sweet 16. And look, I know Purdue is kind of the trendy first number one seed to get eliminated because it's like we all saw the end of that Penn State game on Sunday in the Big 12, Big 10 title game in Chicago, where it's like press Purdue, press Purdue. And the freshman guards, Fletcher Lawyer and Braden Smith, have struggled sometimes against pressure. But that doesn't mean they don't practice against it. I mean, you can only simulate it so much. I know they work on it in practice. I was listening to an interview with Bruce Weber, who Matt Painter used to coach under for years at Southern Illinois. And, you know, he says, yeah, they practice against it, but they just, you know, kind of froze a little bit. But I think Purdue advances to Sweet 16. I think it's them and Duke. And that's actually a rematch of what we saw in the PK 80. Out in Portland. Now, Purdue got the better of Duke. They ran them off 75-56. It won't be as easy the second time around. This Duke team is much better. So I look to the bottom of the bracket of who I have advancing here, and I have Kentucky and Marquette advancing to the Sweet 16. And I would lean Marquette. I just think that they're a little bit more offensively dynamic. So I have 1 versus 2 in the regional final, and I'm going, it's going to sound ridiculous. The contrarian number 1 seed, the number 1 seed that everybody think is the least likely to get to the Final Four, I think the Purdue Boilermakers are coming out of Madison Square Garden, the East Region champions, in the final over Marquette.
In Matt Painter, we trust. Matt Youmans, do you trust him?
Well, a qualifying statement there. Wes is an IU graduate, so he's trying to put the hex on Purdue.
I knew you would say that.
It's a win-win either way.
I knew you would say that.
It's obvious what he's trying to do here.
Put the reverse jinx on him.
No, but I also knew that he was going to look at Purdue strongly here because of Wes is kind of a contrarian thinker.
Yeah.
And right now, the number 1 public pick for the first number 1 seed to get knocked out is Purdue.
Yeah,
Everybody's
absolutely.
picking against Purdue, and that might be the thing Purdue has going most for it, right?
Yeah, you can get 12 to 1s on them right now to cut down the net.
A lot of times you go opposite of what the public opinion is. Overwhelming public opinion. That's probably a smart play. An overwhelming public opinion is Purdue's going out early and everybody's saying Memphis in round 2. So that's probably not going to go according to script. That said, I've been talking up Duke for weeks. And I think there's a lot of upside. Kyle Filipowski, freshman, I don't know if he's a legit 7 foot, but he's close. 6'10", 6'11". He can bring the ball up the floor, lead the break, shoot the 3. He's a stud. And the other freshmen for the Blue Devils have really grown up. Purdue was the best team in college basketball in November and December. But, Dave, this is March, right?
Yes.
And Purdue is probably playing like a fringe top 25 team right now, unfortunately. Unless they can flip the switch and play much better here in the tournament, I can't see Purdue getting by Duke a second time. Like Wes said, Purdue beat Duke by 19 when they played in November. I've got Duke coming out of this region, despite all 5 ESPN analysts on the Sunday night show picking Duke to come out of the region. I plan to pick Duke to go to the Final Four, so I got to stick with that plan.
8 to 1, by the way, for Duke to come out of this region.
Wow,
do you
really?
like that number?
I saw plus 550 here at Circuit.
Yeah, I got to think that number is going to get bet down.
Right? Yeah. So if you can still find them out there, that feels like a playable number. But, again, down to 550 in some other shops. So, again, Wes, when you look at Purdue very quickly here, because, again, I did take that 12 to 1 ticket for them to win the whole thing. It's not as contrarian a view as you have, but what is it about them, what Matt says to flip the switch, that you believe that they can do so?
A, they don't foul. B, they rebound. And C, they've got the player of the year in Zach Edey.
Yeah, last time I checked, he's still, 7'4"?
Yeah, didn't shrink.
Still that tall. When we come back, let's talk about the women and see who we think is going to come out and win the whole thing. Danielle Alvari is going to join us next, right here, special edition of VSiN Tonight. And we continue our special edition of VSiN Tonight. Dave Ross and Wes Reynolds here at Circus Sportsbook in fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada. Let's talk about the women's bracket here, Wes. And to help us do that, we're going to bring in Danielle Alvari. You can follow her on Twitter, as I do. A fantastic follow on Twitter at Danielle Alvari. And we've got these regions. It's kind of different, obviously, from the men's tournament. We've got the Greenville region and the Seattle region. So let's try to go down the list here. We'll start off with Greenville region number 1. Big picture, Danielle, it feels like this might be the chalkiest of the regions.
Yeah, I call Greenville 1 Bummer City because if you're in this region, you have to go through the defending champs, the undefeated 32-0 SEC champs, the South Carolina Gamecocks. They slow you down, they rebound. Their offense is not even how they win games. It's on the defensive side for this team. So the teams that they've struggled against, and struggle is very, very small letters here, have been the teams that have been able to slow them down. UCLA was one of them actually at South Carolina earlier in the year, able to just muck up their offense a little bit, but they are just able to do everything they want with this team. Lots of senior leadership. Aaliyah Boston, obviously most outstanding player from the Final Four last year, back and likely the first overall pick in the WNBA. So this team is poised to run it back.
Yeah, Don Staley's crew. I feel bad for the Spartans there of Norfolk State, my old neck of the woods there, Wes Reynolds. Any shot of anybody else coming out of this region? Because I think, as Danielle puts it, it feels like the South Carolina region.
I think this is going to be South Carolina, and they're going to play in Columbia. Of course, the protected seeds host their first and second round games in their own arena, so they don't have to leave the state until they get to the Final Four, and I think they will. However, not the easiest to draw, you would think, for the number 1 seed.
Okay.
South Florida and Marquette are very solid teams in the 8 and 9. Jose Fernandez down in South Florida, they were upset actually in the American tournament, even though they won the league. Marquette beat UConn, Texas, Gonzaga, all NCAA tournament teams. So you look through, they should get through that, though, and they'd have a rematch with UCLA, as Danielle mentioned. Only lost by 10 to this team. They made a great run in the Pac-12 tournament before they upset Stanford, actually the top seed, who was a 1 seed in this tournament, before they fell against Washington State in the final. Kiki Rice, really good freshman for UCLA. So, going forward, I do think that this could be challenging. Now, when they advance to the Elite Eight, which they will, they could either get number 2 Maryland or number 3 Notre Dame. They killed Maryland, South Carolina back on November 11th, 81-56. But Brenda Friese's team is a lot better.
Love Brenda
They
Friese.
were really good. Great game against Iowa that they fell short in the Big Ten tournament. So South Carolina is going to advance. Notre Dame, Olivia Miles, I don't know if she's going to be healthy. So South Carolina is going to move on to the final.
I have a feeling they're going to come up in conversation a little bit later on in this segment. But Danielle, let's move on to Seattle 4. And I don't want to give out the cheat codes here, but I think you guys think that maybe this is where the chalk does not hold form here. Who do you have coming out of Seattle 4?
This is the chaos region. This is where you could expect a lot of things to go haywire just because there's a lot of talent in this section here. I decided to go with a fun pick here, and I'm actually going to ask you not to pick this as well. Stanford is the smart pick, in my opinion, here, the 1 seed. But I'm going to go with 2 seed Iowa for me, beating Stanford in the Elite Eight to advance to the Final Four. Iowa has the scoring power to absolutely wreak havoc on teams. Their defense is where they fall short, and it's not a defense that you should back going to a Final Four unless you're crazy like me. Stanford is the more balanced team. They beat South Carolina in the championship game in 2021. They made it to the Final Four last year, lost to UConn. They have the size that they need to be able to compete with the South Carolina team. So Stanford is a smarter pick. I'm going with Iowa. It's more fun. They have Caitlin Clark. She's averaging 27 points per game. She's an absolute joy to watch. I think everybody wants them to make it to the Final Four just for the sheer entertainment value of it all. They are at 18-1 as well to win it all if you think that offense can just blaze through any kind of defense that is on this side of the bracket.
All right, so we're going to go with the 2 seed there. Are you going to go with the 1 seed here, Wes? You're going to go in an upset too?
I am not. I'm going to go with the 4 seed,
Oh,
the Texas
wow.
Longhorns, coached by Vic Schaefer, who, by the way, has made a national championship before, 2-time Final Four in 2017 and 2018 when he was at Mississippi State, was the Big 12 Coach of the Year. They lost to Stanford, who's the 1 seed in the Seattle region, last year in the Elite Eight. I think they get some payback. I know they lost in the Big 12 title game, but Vic Schaefer, I think, is one of the best coaches in college basketball. He's 75-25 there at Texas since 2020. I think Hook'em Horns is going to be playing in Dallas in the Final Four.
The chaos region, as Danielle said. I love that. Okay, so the 2 seed and the 4 seed coming out of there in Seattle 4. Let's go back to Greenville 2. And I got a Hoosier to my left here, Danielle. Is it anybody besides IU coming out of this bracket?
I think Wes will be very happy with my answer. I do have Indiana coming out, but it might be a little difficult for them. I actually have them going up against number 2 Utah in the Elite Eight to advance to the Final Four. This Indiana team is the most well-balanced team, really, in these top teams that we're discussing. They haven't really had the injury bug either, which is different from a lot of these teams at the top as well. They're led by Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year, Mackenzie Holmes. So like I said, able to compete on the defensive side and the offensive side. Hasn't seen South Carolina this year. Also Big Ten Coach of the Year here, and just hit their program's best Elite Eight run just last season. I think they pushed through the Final Four this year, and actually I have them going to the championship game.
Wow. And again, so Danielle's already picked IU, so it's not a homer pick by you if you go along with the Hoosiers.
Yeah, I think the Lady Hoosiers are coming out here. By the way, no team in women's college basketball have more wins over ranked teams than the Lady Hoosiers.
That's
9
right.
ranked wins this year. So for the people in USA Today that were whining and complaining about, oh, Caitlin Clark in Iowa should have been a number 1 seed, not Indiana.
It's a good storyline, Wes.
Yeah, but Indiana's the better team. They split the regular season meetings, by the way,
Yeah.
IU and Iowa. Caitlin Clark hit that 3 at the buzzer. And I know Indiana didn't look great in the Big Ten tournament. They didn't have energy in the first game against Michigan State and then eventually put them away in the second half. Then the next day they came out of House of Fire and were up by 20 on Ohio State, who, by the way, is a 3 seed in the women's NCAA tournament. Ohio State comes back from 20 down. I think that Indiana team was just tired. And one of the things about this women's tournament that's different than the men's tournament, the big conferences play the first week of championship week, and the lower to mid majors play the second week. So all these teams in the Big 10 and the Big 12, Pac-12, SEC, and so on and so forth, they have a week of rest, an extra week of rest, and I think that's good for Indiana. I think they played in so many high-leverage games. They need that rest, and like Danielle mentioned, Mackenzie Holmes, Terry Morin, who is going to be the national coach of the year. Lady Hoosiers going to be in Dallas.
Seattle 3. Danielle, Gino is a 2 seed. What do you make of the Huskies? Can they upset the apple cart here as a 2 seed and come out of this region?
Yes, and he'll tell you the Bill Belichick line of they're an underdog in some way, and he doesn't think their chances are very good. But they are a number 2 seed, could have easily been a number 1 seed. And really just the issue, we saw Paige Beckers go down with, I believe, a knee injury earlier in the year before the season even started. And then AZ Fudd just returning to the lineup. And I think that's the key here for this UConn team. I have UConn advancing to the Final Four out of this region over Virginia Tech, the 1 seed. I don't think Virginia Tech's getting enough credit because they went on a little run at the end, and that's why they even made it to this 1 seed. They weren't performing over the top from the start of the season. They just kind of snuck into the discussion in this last month or so. So I do think that Connecticut just has the pedigree here. I believe, Wes can correct me if I'm wrong, they are going for their 15th straight Final Four appearance. So that is not a streak you want to break, and there is something to having this championship Final Four pedigree. So for me, it's UConn advancing. So I have 2 1 seeds and 2 seeds in my Final Four, which is very chalky.
Are you going to go with the underdog in Gino and UConn, as Danielle is?
I'm going to take a shot with Kevin McGuff and Ohio State, number 3 seed in this region. By the way, they were 19-0, and then they kind of peaked early, got some injuries. They were surprised last year, but not a surprise this year. And I think they've got Sheldon, J.C. Sheldon, a top 25 player, back from injury. So Kevin McGuff has a lot more options this time of the season. I want to see how Fudd holds up. She just returned in the Big East tournament. So I am going with the Lady Buckeyes out of this region.
All right, it's down to the nitty-gritty. If you want to back South Carolina and win the whole thing, you got to lay $2. Danielle, is that the smart play, even though they're the overwhelming favorite?
Oh, geez. What does that mean? They have to win more than 64% of the time? I do think they do. I think if you run this simulation, that happens. I think there are some better numbers out there, too. I think I've seen some minus 165, so obviously shop around for the best number. I would like to bet something south of minus 200, but there's probably smarter ways to bet this tournament. But I do feel like it's South Carolina's tournament to lose. So I have them winning it, but I know Wes does not agree.
Oh.
Well, head says South Carolina, but we're not going with the head. We're going with the ticker here. We're going with the heart.
Wow.
The Lady Hoosiers, led by Coach of the Year, Terry Morin, soon to be Coach of the Year. And, they added a lot of shooters in the offseason, too. It's not just Mackenzie Holmes and Grace Berger anymore. You had Sydney Parrish, who transferred in, but comes back home to Indiana, was at Oregon. Sarah Scalia from Minnesota is a team that can shoot the 3. I think that they were just a little bit out of gas at the end of the regular season. This week off is going to do them a lot of good. The Lady Hoosiers to cut down the nets in Dallas, Texas.
7-1 for Indiana to get the win, but at least you both have the same final, right, Danielle? Because you've got South Carolina over Indiana.
Top 2 teams.
Yeah.
chalk's going to play out. Danielle, a lot of fun. Enjoy the tournament. Thanks for your expertise. We'll catch up again soon.
Thanks, guys.
All right,
Thank you,
there
Danielle.
she is, Danielle Alvari. Everybody give her a follow on Twitter. Again, a very entertaining follow. So you guys have the same teams, just the different outcome. You've got Indiana over South Carolina. Danielle is going.
Hashtag IUWBB, going to get it done.
When we come back, we're going to the Midwest and back to the men. Come on back. It is a special episode of VSiN Tonight. Back alongside Matt Youmans and Wes Reynolds. This is a special edition of VSiN Tonight as we're going through every single game, every single bracket of the NCAA tournament. Gentlemen, it's time to get to the Midwest. And this is an intriguing 8-9 matchup. Iowa, the 8 seed, against Auburn, the 9. So Auburn kind of limps into this thing here. And Iowa, a little bit of the same here after what they're showing there in the Big Ten tournament. Wes, let me start off with you because I feel like you see the number. It's almost a pick 'em. Right now, the Tigers are a small favorite at just 1. So everybody's thinking this might be the ultimate coin flip game. How do you see it?
I think it is the ultimate coin flip game, but maybe the difference is the fact that Auburn gets to play 2 hours away from the Plains in Birmingham against Iowa. Maybe Fran McCaffrey got sent here to play almost a virtual road game for his constant complaining of the referees and abusing the referees in the Big Ten Conference. So maybe Selection Committee Chair Chris Reynolds sent him to his fate here. But Iowa, look, they lost in the first round last year to Richmond. They got upset in the 4-13. The schematic matchup, I think, favors them because Auburn is a team full of chuckers that really cannot shoot. So Iowa can kind of safely play and let them shoot and maybe try to pack it in the lane a little bit and get some rebounds. But Iowa can't guard in transition, and that's dangerous against Auburn, who can force a lot of turnovers. Bruce Pearl likes to press. He plays a lot of guys, about 10 deep. So I lean Auburn here. This is not one I bet because this is probably the ultimate coin flip game. I just think, going down to play Birmingham, sometimes that crowd can make a little bit of a difference, especially, and they usually root for the underdog, but this time they're rooting for the local team, and that's the Auburn Tigers.
Yeah, I'm not sure where I heard it, but I heard a couple of smart guys call this the ultimate coin flip game. I'm going to give Auburn about a 52% chance to win this one. My power numbers show Auburn is 1 point better. Wes is right. Tigers play a helter-skelter style. I don't like the way they play. They chuck up a lot of bad shots. And, Iowa is never a team I like to bet on in these type of situations here because the Hawkeyes under Fran McCaffrey played no defense.
Yeah.
And, against if the Tigers are hot from 3, that's going to be big trouble. But this could be a wildly entertaining game with a lot of runs. It could be a really good live betting game. I think you're going to see a lot of big runs in this one. And a high-scoring game. But to make a pick on it, I have to go with Auburn here as a slight favorite, and I think the location is a slight advantage as well.
Now, the kids don't know of the issues of Bruce Pearl with Iowa, but Wes, do you think very quickly that he certainly does? This is going to be one of those games he doesn't want to lose.
Yeah, it's he coached there under Dr. Tom Davis, and, of course, maybe the winner gets Deion Thomas's SUVs when he dropped the dime on Jimmy Collins.
Yeah, he did.
An Illinois assistant under Lou Henson. So a lot of history of Bruce Pearl in Iowa.
That could be very, very interesting, and maybe Fran McCaffrey will stare down a ref or a fan. Who knows? Let's go to the 5-12s. Again, we always mention that the 5-12s are normally where you're looking for those upsets here. So Miami kind of limping into this one here against Drake, not the musician, the basketball team. Matt Youmans. Drake, they feel live. We got injury concerns with the Hurricanes, but I love Coach L, Jim Larinaga. What do you make of this matchup?
Well, this is one where I'm going to ignore my power ratings because I've got Miami 5.5 points better.
Whoa.
And I don't want to play Miami here. I want to be on Drake, but I did not get Drake +3, so I'm not going to play it. As far as the big guy for the Hurricanes, Omir, what's his name, Wes?
Yeah, Norshad Omir.
It looks like he's going to play. I got information that says it looks like he is going to play in this game. There's been a lot of speculation about whether or not he can or can't go. It looks like he's a go. But that said, I do like this Drake team quite a bit. And I knew this was going to be a hot dog play by a lot of people. The Bulldogs blew out Bradley by 26 in the Missouri Valley title game. Tucker DeVries, 6'7" sophomore guard, son of the coach, 19 points a game, 39% from 3, surrounded by 4 senior starters. Man, this is the type of dog I love to bet. I did not get the 3, but I'm hoping I can find a way to be on the Drake side. I might live bet it, but for now, put me on Drake.
I have not bet this one, Wes, for all the reasons Matt just laid out. Miami was a team I was really looking forward to in the tournament to bet them. And then you get the injury concerns, and then you get the matchup against Drake, and all of a sudden I go, man, now I'm nervous of backing Coach Larrañaga.
Yeah, and I did, by the way, get a little bit of 3.5. Of course, those have disappeared here. But in the words of the Seinfeld episode, you got to love the Drake. And I think I do love the Drake. And they get a second chance now, like Matt mentioned, with the 4 seniors surrounded by the son of the coach, Tucker DeVries. They were in the tournament 2 years ago during the COVID year, obviously, if no spectators, beat Wichita State in an absolute rock fight in that first 4 game, 53-52, an old Missouri Valley rivalry there, and then lost 72-56 to USC. I look at Miami, and this is a team that I think is not a very good defensive team, even with Omier in the lineup. They've struggled defending pick and roll and have been eaten up in a lot of games in the ACC. Drake is going to be able to do that. Drake is going to run a lot of pick and roll and a lot of pick and pop here with Roman Penn, who's a very dynamic point guard. So I think this is the 12 over 5. Everybody's looking at some kind of trendy 12 over 5s. This may be trendy, but I'm going with this. I like the Drake over the U.
All right, on the money line there, might not even need the points here of the 2.5 right now. Okay, 4-13. This is going to be a tough discussion for one Wes Reynolds. IU is the 4. Kent State, the Golden Flashes. Whew. Some people really like this basketball team. Wes, when we start off with you, what do you make of Indiana? Is this going to be a dicey proposition for the Hoosiers?
This is going to be a tough discussion for yours truly because I don't know if I like my alma mater here, to be honest with you. And I'll set up this is kind of one of the interesting storyline matchups in the first round because Rob Senderoff, now the head coach of Kent State, was a former Indiana assistant when one Kelvin Sampson was the head coach. Rob Senderoff was fired from Indiana University in the mid-2000s as part of the impermissible excess telephone calls. There was also some other reasons, lack of program control. I don't want to go into that. But he hates Indiana. He hates Indiana's guts. You're going to be motivated in the NCAA tournament anyway, but he loathes Indiana. He would love to get a crack at IU, and now he has it. This is a veteran team. Their point guard, Sincere Carey, 80th percentile ball screen usage rate, 90th percentile efficiency per synergy. This is a guy that really leads the offense. He's going to be a tough cover. Indiana's going to miss Xavier Johnson here, by the way, defensively to guard him. So we'll see if Hood Schifino, whose defense can kind of be hit or miss, can guard him. One of the things I worry about Indiana at the end of the season was the fact that they looked like a very tired basketball team. I was listening to longtime Indiana radio voice Don Fisher today doing an interview, and he's going to know. He's done it for 50 years. He knows what a tired basketball team is. And I think so when you look at the minutes, when you look at Trace Jackson-Davis playing 38 minutes every game, Hood Schifino playing 36 minutes. I think Indiana is the better team here, but I would lean to Kent State in the points.
Sounds to me like it's personal. Rob Senderoff hates Indiana, hates Indiana's guts, and he loathes Indiana. Did
I mention he doesn't like Indiana?
I don't think he likes them.
Hey, Golden Flashes won 28 games. They're legit. That's not easy to do in the MAC. That's a challenging conference to post that kind of record. And I think Sincere Carey, the point guard, is kind of set up here to be a March Madness type of star. I'm going to predict, Dave, that Sincere Carey is going to have a shot to win this game.
Ooh.
That's why I'm taking the points with the Flashes. I like Carey. I like Malik Jacobs. And if you look at the non-conference, Kent State really stepped out and got challenged. Lost at Houston 49-44. Lost at Gonzaga 73-66. This team's legit. And the more I've looked at this game and I watched the replay of the MAC title game last night, I think Kent State can win this game. I got to take the plus 4.5.
Very quickly, Wes, because, again, a lot of times you might like teams like I mentioned with Miami and Florida against Drake, and then you look at the matchup and go, oh, I don't like it. Is this a situation here where you might have liked your alma mater a little bit more if it wasn't for this matchup against Kent State?
Yeah, styles make fights in the NCAA tournament. And I would have liked it better if they were playing like Lafayette or Louisiana Lafayette or another 13 seed. This is a tough one, I think, for Indiana. So I would lean to taking the points as well.
I think this is there are two 13 seeds that are really difficult to contend with in this tournament. Kent State's one and Iona is the other.
And again, we'll get into your official predictions in the next segment of who's coming out of this Midwest. But it does feel like if Kent State is live to pull the upset here, potentially are we looking at another scenario here like a Furman where maybe they don't just stop at one win and maybe win two?
Well, I should have added that. Yeah, there's three. Furman is the other 13.
Right.
It's going to be really difficult. I think Louisiana is by far the worst of the 14 seeds.
Kent State, by the way, a possibility if they get through Indiana and maybe get Drake in the second round, as I think they will, could have a rematch of mentor and pupil, Kelvin Sampson against Rob Zenderhoff in the Sweet 16, former assistant under Kelvin
Sampson, by the way, hates Indiana.
Kelvin Sampson does hate Indiana.
Oh, yes, he does. Don't get him started on that. All right, gentlemen, when we come back, we'll round out the Midwest Division and also get your pathways to the Final Four. Who's coming out of the Midwest? That is next. Continuing rolling on here, a special edition of VSiN Tonight. Continuing the VSiN Tonight special edition, the bracket betting edition. Dave Ross alongside Wes Reynolds and Matt Youmans here at Circus Sportsbook in fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada. Gentlemen, let's go back to the Midwest here, and let's talk about the 3-14 matchup. Xavier is going to take on Kennesaw State. Now, the X-Men did not bother to show up for the Big East Final. It did not appear. I don't know if it's going to help their legs against Kennesaw State, but Matt, let me start off with you. What do you make of the X-Men in this big-time favorites role?
Well, Fremantle's been out for Xavier, and if they were at full strength, I would like this team's chances to go really deep in the tournament, but it's a different story without him.
Mm-hmm.
Kennesaw State, one of the best stories in college basketball. Amir Abdur-Rahim, the coach for the Owls, who were 1-28 in his first season,
wow.
And now they're a tournament team. That was in 2019, 2020. So you look at Kennesaw, Chris Youngblood, a star guard, averages about 15 points, shoots 42% from three. I don't see a lot of talent on this team, at least in terms of matching up with Xavier. The Owls lost by 34 at San Diego State and by 14 at Indiana. Hoosiers must have taken a half off in that game. But
Trace Jackson-Davis, by the way, did not play.
He did not play in that game? Okay, well, that explains it. This number looks cheap. You know, we were talking about how number one seeds aren't laying as many points as they used to. This is the type of game where I think Xavier used to be laying a much bigger number. If I'm playing Kennesaw, I would have to get up around 15 in this one.
It's come down.
Well, I just don't like this. I don't like this Kennesaw team. It's a great story. I'm not sure they can match up with Xavier for 40 minutes. I actually lean to the favorite. I never bet double-digit favorites, but I think it's got to be favorite or pass here.
Yeah, 11.5 now, but Wes, it has come down from 13 where the number opened up.
Yeah, and I actually kind of like Kennesaw State here. I don't think this is an easy game for Xavier to start out. Kennesaw, very athletic, coached by Amir Abdur-Rahim, as Matt mentioned, a great story. They've turned this around in 4 years. Abdur-Rahim, by the way, was an assistant for Tom Crean at Georgia, and if you watch Coach Crean's teams, they're always a very good catch-and-shoot team, and this team loves the corner three. And Kennesaw State can shoot the ball very well. They're a very good three-point shooting team, 37%, 33rd best in all of college basketball out of 363 teams. So they're going to get a lot of open threes. Shot quality has them rated pretty high. They play a lot of 4-round one, 4 out, 1 in, a lot of ball screen motion. Damon Robinson is a kid who they have that's actually a real load on the block, 6'8", 264. So a very big guy that can kind of beat and bang with Jack Nungy. Of course, Matt mentioned they don't have Zach Fremantle. Xavier could have been really dangerous, I think, with both Fremantle and Nungy. Not only big guys that can score down low, but also can shoot the three. Defensively, you're going to see a lot of switching defenses from Kennesaw State. You usually don't see that from a lower major program, but you will here. They'll mix in some press. They'll have some zone. They'll run a little man. So, you got to stop Colby Jones and Sule Boom. They've been a really good backcourt. They were really good in the Big East tournament until Saturday, where they were kind of out of gas in the final against Marquette. Xavier's offense, I think, can really operate here, though. Nungy is very mobile. Maybe he gets the big load, Robinson, in some foul trouble. But Kennesaw State, very well coached. They can shoot. I think they stay in the game. This is one of those where they stay in the game, and then probably the last 5 to 7 minutes, it starts to get away from them. So there's an opportunity to bet Xavier live here. The question is, will Kennesaw State be close enough? Because I don't think Xavier's going to blow this team out. It might be Kennesaw first half, might be worth like a half-unit play, and I also do like the over here.
All right, gentlemen, let's go to the number 7 and 10 matchup here. This will be Texas A&M against Penn State. And again, Penn State, if you didn't see them on Sunday against Purdue, a frantic comeback almost pulled that one out to win the Big Ten. They come up a little bit short there. Going up against A&M, maybe a surprise to some people in the SEC. Matt, let me start off with you on this one. What do you make of the Nittany Lions as the 10 seed against the 7 Texas A&M?
I like Penn State, not just because of the run the Lions made in the Big Ten tournament where they had to play 4 games in 4 days. I like teams that can shoot the 3 and shoot at a high percentage. And if you look at Penn State, you got Lundy, Funk, Winter, Dredd, Pickett. All those guys shoot 37% or better from three-point range. And Penn State's weakness is in the low post. If you have a big man, a guy like Zach Edey, not too many teams have that. But if you have just a normal big man who can score in the middle, you can really hurt Penn State. I really don't think Texas A&M's got that. So I'm really hesitant to play Big Ten teams in this tournament. I don't think the conference is actually very good this year, even though I'm a Big Ten proponent. We've seen the Big Ten fade in previous tournaments. But Penn State's a team I like here. I was actually going into the Big Ten regular season. This was one of my dark horse plays. I thought they could win the league. They didn't show up until Chicago in the Big Ten tournament. You look at Texas A&M's non-conference, incredibly weak. And I'm just not a fan of Buzz Williams and the Aggies. Maybe they'll prove me wrong here, but I'm taking 3 with Penn State.
2 for 2 here on the Nittany Lions. I took the 3 as well. 2 teams that did make the conference tournament final and fell short before they meet up here. Texas A&M, when you watch this team, they like to take away the lane, and they're willing to give up a lot of three-point attempts. And in fact, they give up 12th highest rate in the country, 45.9% of Texas A&M shots, or opponent shots, I should say, are from beyond the arc. Well, that's bad news against Penn State, who's the 10th highest rate in the country, 47.4% of threes. It's almost like, and this is kind of dismissive of a really good coach in Micah Shrewsbury, but it is almost like, a rec ball league offense where you got a bunch of guys spread out around the floor shooting threes, and then you got one guy that kind of pounds the paint, and that's Jalen Pickett, who's a load, who's only 6'4", but can get down there and can score at the rim and outquick some bigger guys. So that's what Penn State wants to do, and really that's modern basketball. It's all about, if you ever listen to people from the analytics community, I know JVT talks about a lot for the NBA. Shoot a bunch of threes and get shots at the rim. Mid-range, no bueno. That's kind of the new age of basketball here, and Penn State certainly plays that way. And speaking of shooting all those threes, they're 9th best nationally. 38.5% from the 3 are the Nittany Lions. Aggies also like to create offense from pressure defense, but that's difficult to do, I think, against a Penn State team that really doesn't turn the ball over. 13.7% turnover rate. That's the 6th lowest turnover rate in the country. A lot of people are banking on A&M here saying, oh, they got underseeded, as a 7 seed. Their non-conference schedule wasn't very good, and they did go 15-3 in the SEC, but they didn't have to play at Tennessee. They didn't have to play at Alabama, so they had kind of an imbalanced schedule in their favor. I know Texas A&M, the ratings, they played a little bit better ball down the stretch, but I just think giving up that many threes to a Penn State team that I think has a little bit of confidence here, that's not a good recipe for success. I think Penn State takes out Texas A&M here.
All right, gentlemen, to come out now, it's time for the brass tacks. Who's coming out of the Midwest? And again, right now, the shortest favorite on the board is Houston at plus $1.60 to do just that. Marcus Sasser, that's going to be the question mark. Is he healthy enough to really help this team and propel them to a Final Four? Wes, let me start off with you. How do you navigate this bracket?
Yeah, Matt mentioned that he thought Alabama's path was the easiest for a 1 seed in the South. I actually think it's the Houston Cougars who have the easiest path here. Now, Marcus Sasser, I think that maybe they are very, conservative with his minutes in the first game against Northern Kentucky. It's like, okay, let's give him a little bit of extra time. Let's let him, break a sweat a little bit, but don't really grind him into the ground against an opponent where you really don't have to. I just look at Houston, and obviously we know it's ahead of them. The Final Four is in Houston this year. Can they catch that like Butler 2014 thing in a bottle, or the mid-2010s in a bottle where the Indy team got to play the Final Four in Indy? Houston, obviously a much better chance here at a 1 seed. I don't think Iowa or Auburn have anything for them. And I think that 5-12 and 4-13 could be some havoc can be wreaked. Because I mentioned I like Drake, and I kind of, Kent State and the points I would certainly lean to. You could get a double-digit seed in the Sweet 16 in Kansas City for Houston, and then double-digit seeds don't beat one seeds in the Sweet 16. They love the Cinderella that first weekend, but once you get to the Sweet 16, get the hell out. Get the hell out. We don't want you here anymore. The last thing they want is a St. Peter's overmatched by Carolina in the Elite Eight. So Houston marches on to the Elite Eight. I do think it's going to be chalk 1 versus 2, Houston versus Texas for the right to play in Houston, Texas in the Final Four. And Houston fell short last year. Lost in the Elite Eight to Villanova. I think they get over the hump this year. I like the Cougars to be in the Final Four.
I'll tell you what, after listening to Wes break down the Xavier-Kennesaw State game, I'm changing my bracket. Now I've got Kennesaw State coming out of the Midwest instead of Houston.
I mean, the Sasser injury should concern people that are backing.
Not really. Kelvin Sampson just said yesterday Sasser should be 100% by Thursday, so I think that's being exaggerated.
Okay.
Kelvin Sampson always tells the truth, by the way. Just to let you know.
And I'm not even sure Sasser's going to play Thursday. Why would he play
Shouldn't need him.
Northern Kentucky when you don't really need him?
Yep.
So that would give him a little bit more rest. What's interesting to me is how tough Auburn played Alabama, and everybody's dismissing Auburn against Houston. Well, if Auburn can play Bama that tough, why can't they play Houston that tough? So that's why I think this bracket's maybe a little bit more difficult than it appears, is that Houston's got to get through Auburn, possibly through Indiana or Drake, or Kent State. And then you got Texas on the bottom half with Kennesaw State and Xavier. Now, I think Alabama and Houston definitely have the easiest pass of all the 1 seeds to get to the Final Four. There's no doubt. Do you know which one is a coin flip? I'm going to go with a hometown favorite here and take Houston to survive the Midwest.
Do you both gentlemen look at Houston and say they play the best defense, team defense?
No
that's the number 1 team, right?
They are so long and rangy. They just, I've watched them in person before. Watched them against Butler last year in the Maui Invitational out here in Vegas. Yeah. And I knew just watching them in warm-ups, they're going to beat the hell out of this team, and they did. They just got long-arm athletes, and they never stop. Kelvin Sampson's teams always defend.
Yeah, I feel like they've got a real good shot to come out. That's why they have the smallest favorite at plus $1.60 to represent this region in the Final Four. One more region to go, gentlemen. We're going to head out west, young man. We'll start to break down the West next when you come back. Special edition of VSiN Tonight. 2 more experts to my left, Matt Youmans, Wes Reynolds. Let's go out west, young man. And let's talk about the West here because we're going to have an intriguing 8-9 matchup. Arkansas, Illinois are going to do battle here. Illinois, my timeline, everybody back in Chicago. They can't figure out Brad Underwood's team. Matt Youmans, can you?
Yeah, it's not very good.
So now, against Arkansas here, small number, what do you make of the Hogs against Illinois?
Illini really struggling. They don't have a point guard who can run the show necessarily, and I'm going to keep my faith here in Eric Musselman. Even though the Razorbacks were really shaky to finish the regular season, they blew a double-digit lead in the second half and fell to Texas A&M in the SEC tournament. After that game, Musselman walks off the court dropping F-bombs. He's going to have his players motivated for this game. He's finally got a fully healthy backcourt here. Nick Smith Jr. back there with Anthony Black, Devontae Davis, and Ricky Council. I think Brad Underwood has always been a coach I like. But I believe he's struggling with this team too, and the Illini are stumbling to the finish line. They're fading more than fighting. They've lost 3 of 4 entering the tournament. I played Arkansas -2. This is one of the bets I like. Again, I'm not going to play a Big Ten team unless I really, really like the situation, the matchup for the Big Ten team. I like Arkansas here.
I'm not necessarily a follower or fader of a conference, but I am going against the Big Ten team here. I like Arkansas as well. I think Illinois, short trip to Des Moines, so a little bit of a advantage for whatever that's worth in the travel, but Arkansas is going to test that drop coverage, I think, a lot. They put a lot of pressure on the rims, run a lot of ISOs, have a lot of ball handlers like Smith, like Council, Black, Davis, so they get downhill, and, they can actually shoot in the mid-range a little bit, even though Illinois wants you to take those mid-range shots. Illinois, you look at them offensively, too. Arkansas is going to be very active in the passing lanes, dribble funnel. Illinois has only one really good shooter, and that's Matthew Meyer, the former Baylor transfer, that's the one reason I don't totally discount Illinois, because you do have 2 guys, Matthew Meyer, out of Baylor and also TJ Shannon from Texas Tech that have won games in the NCAA tournament. So you can't really dismiss them, despite what Matt said, which is accurate about the lack of a point guard for Illinois. Arkansas at the rim really defends well. McKay Mitchell has been really come alive of late in doing that. So, Nick Smith being healthy, I think it changes it for Arkansas. Nick Smith and Eric Musselman, I don't think have been on the same page all year, and that's why Nick Smith is going to go to the NBA draft, and I think they know it, but maybe they've had a come-to-Jesus meeting where it's like, okay, dude, I know you're leaving. Let's try to put together a run here, and do that. Musselman, he puts a lot of pressure in isolation defense, too, in the NCAA tournament, and Illinois is just not very good at one-on-one defense, so I like the Hogs here.
Illinois had Coleman Hawkins, who's 6'10", playing a point. He's done a decent job with it, but I like the situation a little bit better for Arkansas here.
All right, so you guys are going to lean towards the Hogs in that one right now. 2.5 is what we're seeing here at DraftKings. All right, gents, I need some good news here. 5-12, St. Mary's against, let's go Rams, VCU, my alma mater, Wes Reynolds. Is this where the 12 is going to upset the 5?
It very well could be. St. Mary's, by the way, they did get sent to Albany, which is kind of a, when you're not when you're not a protected seed, you get sent, and St. Mary's has to go across the country, and then VCU with that line pressure, can get St. Mary maybe turning the ball over. St. Mary's don't see a lot of these VCU-esque havoc teams in the West Coast Conference, but Gonzaga ran a lot of three-quarter court traps in the regular season finale, and BYU did the same, actually, with pressure and got back in the game in the West Coast Conference tournament against St. Mary's. So you got to think VCU's like, we can turn these guys over at will. So, St. Mary's very smart. They slow the tempo. They don't get into very many track meets, but I wonder if VCU is going to get them in that track meet. Even though St. Mary's really doesn't turn the ball over, they're very good at defensive rebounding. They don't give up a lot of offensive rebounds and don't give up a lot of extra possessions. A-10 was down this year. That's why it was only a one-bid league with VCU. I was impressed with VCU coming back against Dayton. Of course, it helps that Dayton was like 0 for their last 15 shots. Part of that was VCU's defense, but man, I would be leaning toward taking VCU in the points here against St. Mary's.
I will take VCU +4. This in the last 12 hours or so. This is one of the dogs I've decided to play too. You got a low total, 123. I think St. Mary's is grossly overrated. If you've looked at the Kim Palm ratings all season, St. Mary's has been top 10. This is not a top 10 team by any stretch of the imagination. The last time we saw the Gales in the West Coast Conference tournament, they were trailing Gonzaga by about 40. And that didn't surprise me all that much. Wes talked about the Zags and BYU putting pressure on St. Mary's. It's not like the Zags and BYU are great teams when it comes to pressure either. So what's VCU going to do here? I think it's a good matchup for you, Dave. Take the Rams and the points, and not going to be a bit surprised if VCU wins the game.
Let's go. Music to my ears, gentlemen, with the 12 seed.
Wes is completely right. You got to look at the location when you handicap some of these. Yeah. Albany, New York is a bad draw for St. Mary's.
Yeah, not that long from Richmond, Virginia. Just got to go up 95.
Just a hop, skip, and a jump.
Yeah, not too far. Let's get to the 4-13 here. Iona, Slicky Ricky, Rick Pitino against UConn. Obviously, there's a lot of rumors about Rick Pitino maybe taking the St. John's job. I don't know if that affects the handicap for you guys here, but a shot to beat a Big East team like UConn. Matt, we start with you. Are they live in this one?
That's a simple handicap for me. Okay, so this number opened 11 at some spots. I couldn't get it that quickly. I'll still take Iona plus 9.5. Now, this is going to be Rick Pitino's last ride with the Gales. You can call them rumors, reports, whatever you want. He's going to be off to St. John's. If not, he's going to get another big job that's out there, but it's probably going to be St. John's. He wants that New York stage. He's got a 27-7 team here. It's very solid defensively, allows 65 points per game. I think this team mirrors UConn in some ways. Walter Clayton, a 43% three-point shooter. Dennis Jenkins, another guy who can play well in the backcourt and kind of match up with the Huskies guards. And you got Nelly Jr. Joseph, who's physically tough, a 6'9" forward. The obvious problem here is that UConn is so physical and tough. They might be too much for Iona to handle on the front line. And that's where UConn might win the game and pull away. That's my biggest concern. But I'm going to count on the coaching genius of Pitino and take the points. and I would expect Iona to be in this the entire way.
Wes, that is fascinating, though, because, again, it's almost like you forget Rick Pitino because he's at Iona. But when you're talking about elite coaches in the NCAA, he might be the most decorated.
Well, and Rick Pitino looks like he's going to get a sneak preview at UConn because he's going to be facing them twice a year when he eventually probably goes to St. John's. But this is kind of a tricky matchup for a team I really like to make noise in this tournament. More on that later with UConn. This is tricky. I lean to lay in the points, but I probably will stay out of this from a point spread perspective. I just think Iona's got two very good guards in Jenkins and Clayton. They create all the pick and rolls and all that stuff, and they try to force Sanogo, UConn star forward, to defend in ball screens. It's mostly been pretty solid in that regard. UConn, good positional size, though. Their guards are a lot bigger than Iona's guards, and I think that could be the difference here. So, Iona not very good at defending the post here. That is a problem against Sanogo. UConn, by the way, number 1 in offensive rebound rate, and I think that's going to serve them well here. But Danny Hurley, I give the coaching edge certainly to Pitino because Danny Hurley, he can be a hothead.
Oh, yes.
And he could get himself in some real trouble here. So, Pitino, look, I don't think Pitino's looking ahead to St. John's. He's not going to cheat his kids. He's not going to cheat his kids at all. Exactly.
Don't you think this is a big ego game for Pitino?
Oh, of course it is.
Oh, yeah.
Of course it is. He wants to get at UConn, faced them many times over the years.
He doesn't want to get beat by Danny Hurley either.
No.
I'm sure he's not a big
fan. I mean, they go way back.
Absolutely.
Of course, the Hurleys coaching and, Dan Hurley Sr., so recruited some of those kids. But I think UConn wins the offensive glass, and that's why they win the game here. But I don't think I'm willing to lay 9.5 to find out.
UConn by 5.
Okay, is this a spot possibly that you're going to look at and play at money line instead of laying the points if you want to get involved in UConn at all?
Yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, you can always look at live betting. I took the points with Pitino, and then we'll just see how the game starts to unfold.
I kind of like that rationale, though, Wes, is that if you don't want to lay the big number, if you guys don't like UConn in the spot, the live betting angle might be the better way to go.
Well, exactly. And also using the first halves.
Yeah.
Especially on totals, like for unders, like I did with West Virginia, Maryland, and a couple other games. But that could be an instance here where you like Iona in the first half, where they keep it close for 20 minutes and then maybe just run out in the final 5.
And then Rick comes out afterwards. I'm really proud of you guys. I'll see you in New York City.
Yeah.
If he takes the St. John's job. Great stuff, gentlemen. When we come back, we're going to round out this region and get your picks. Who's coming out of this region, the final region out west, to get to the Final Four. All that, and look at our predictions. Who's going to cut down the net before this show is over. A special edition of VSiN Tonight. Back alongside a couple sharps, not squares. Wes Reynolds, Matt Youmans.
No squares allowed.
No squares. I would be the one that might qualify. Let's get out to the West and continue our conversation there. 3-14 matchup here with the Zags, a team I'm fascinated by here as they come in as the 3 seed against Grand Canyon. Wes, let me start off with you here. It felt like everybody being the general public, wanted to write off the Zags at the beginning of the year. This is not Mark Few's best team, the backcourt, blah, blah, blah. Have they turned the corner now? Does Mark Few have a sneaky good team here as the 3 seed?
Well, he has one of the best offenses in the country for offensive efficiency, even despite the fact that the backcourt not as talented.
Right.
I mean, there's no Jalen Suggs, there's no Andrew Nembhard here, but Gonzaga very potent offensively, and I'll get to them in a minute. Grand Canyon, meanwhile, they were 45 of 93 from the 3 here at the WAC tournament at the Orleans Arena in their 4-game run. So, look, if they continue that shooting, they can stay within the number, but I'm banking on a little bit of regression for the GCU Antelopes here against Gonzaga. I just think Gonzaga is so potent offensively. Drew Timmy's going to have a huge game in this game because GCU does not have anybody that can stay with him. They're going to try to go small, even if they try to go big. They're going to test Drew Timme in the pick-and-roll defense because we know Drew Timme not the best defender, but he can get what he wants offensively here. GCU, coached by Bryce Drew, they're very well disciplined. They don't beat themselves. They don't give up a lot of transition buckets, which is key against Gonzaga, but I just see some shooting regression here. And I think Gonzaga is going to travel pretty well to Denver. They travel very well here for the WCC tournament. So this would be one I'd be leaning toward laying, actually. And I don't like to lay these big numbers in the first round, but I just think GCU is going to run out of that 3-ball here.
Yeah, I'm not going to lay the number, but this looks like the type of game where Gonzaga could be up around 15 late in the game, laying 16, up 17, something like that's going to be right around the number. Grand Canyon scorching hot from 3.
Yeah.
in the conference tournament. And Rayshawn Harrison, a sophomore guard who's really talented. But the Zags, since February 1st, the number one team in college basketball in offensive efficiency. And I don't see Gonzaga slowing them down, or Grand Canyon slowing Gonzaga down much in this one. Zags lead the nation 87.5 points per game. Grand Canyon scores 74. This could be a entertaining up and down type of game it's a high total.
It's the highest one on the board.
I hate to say play over 156, but I also don't want to bet under in this game. It's at altitude in Denver. Maybe they get worn down a little bit in the second half, but just by default, if I got to make a pick on every game, I'm going to take the 16 with the Lopes.
Again, that is the highest total on the board, Matt, as you're laying out with the offenses here, 156.5. When you look at the 7-10 matchup here between Northwestern and Boise State, we don't expect a whole lot of points when you look at Northwestern here. So, Matt, let me start off with you in the 7-10 matchup. Northwestern really, I think, the surprise this year in the Big Ten. What do you make of them now here in the big dance here against Boise State, where it just feels like, man, when they get there, which is not often, boy, if they win a game, what a year that would be if you win at least one game in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, you got to love the backcourt. And when you get to a tournament like this, you got Chase Audige and Boo Buie, who are senior guards. And I like the Purple Cats a little bit here. I bet them +1. It was not a big play for me, but I did bet Northwestern +1 last night. I'm looking to fade the Mountain West. I understand what Wes says, but you don't necessarily want to look to fade or follow a conference necessarily all the time. But, hey, if you've been betting on Mountain West teams in the NCAA tournament the last few years, you might as well just put your money in Silicon Valley Bank, right? Because they've lost 10 in a row.
Look at you with the current
timely reference.
My goodness.
Well, I was up all night, and I happened to catch the news this morning, and I saw what happened out there. So I'm glad I didn't have my money there, Dave. 10 straight losses for the Mountain West, or 8 straight losses for the Mountain West in the tournament, and 10 of the past 11. You got to prove it to me. I'm taking the Purple Cats here with experienced guards.
I think Matt might have moved the number because, again, he got a point, and now you got to lay a 1.5 here with the Purple Cats. But, Wes, that's where the money's coming in right now.
Yeah, and look, Northwestern, when they went in 2017 with Bryant McIntosh and company, it was like, oh, that's our first NCAA tournament, and they did eventually win a game, then lost to number 1 seed Gonzaga in the second round. Now Northwestern, though, is expected to win a game, maybe even 2 games in the NCAA tournament. Fell short against Penn State, when they were in that spotlight. They lost in overtime in that Friday night quarterfinal. We'll see if they handle it better here. Boise State plays a lot of drop coverage on defense, which you see all the time in the Big Ten. Certainly Northwestern has seen it all year. Chase Audige, Boo Buie, they can create shots in the middle of the floor and function very well at doing so. Boise 14th in defensive efficiency in the Ken Palm, but against bigger guards, they can struggle, and Audige and Buie are bigger guards. You also have Barnheiser off the bench that can help in that matter. So I think Audige and Buie match up a little bit better than Shaver and Rice. And by the way, if this comes down to foul shooting, you don't want Marcus Shaver at the line. We have seen that all season for Boise State. So, just looking at this,
they call him Marcus Point Shaver.
Yeah, Shaver for a reason. What an appropriate name. But I have not bet this as of yet. Obviously, Northwestern getting the support. What I would be looking at, though, I think the total. This looks like an under to me. This
Feels
looks like a game in the high 50s, very low 60s, and a very competitive game. So that's likely where I'm going here.
Yeah, 128.5 right now for that total. All right, gents, let's get down to the brass tacks. Last one here for the Final Four. Who's coming out of the West? Look, the 1 seed is Kansas. But, boy, if you watch that Big 12 final, you go, really, do I want to back Kansas here as the favorite to come out of this? Matt, let me start off with you. Who's coming out of the West?
All right, before the Jalen Clark injury, UCLA was going to be my pick to win the whole thing. And I was going to make that pick with conviction. I was convinced UCLA was the best team in the country. And no matter the bracket, I was picking the Bruins to go all the way. Now, without Jalen Clark, who is, you could say, a top 5 defensive player in the country, 6'5", wing. He's the type of guy you could stick out on Brandon Miller and say, hey, you can handle this guy. And not too many guys could do that. You can make an argument that Jalen Clark's the most valuable defensive player in college basketball. With him on the floor, UCLA's defense allowed 0.82 points per possession, which was ridiculously good.
Wow.
And, even with Clark in the rotation, Mick Cronin only played really 6 guys significant minutes. So now you're going to have some other guys on the bench step up and fill that role. And it's just, I'm not sure they can win 6 games in this tournament without Jalen Clark. It's going to be a heavy load that really, and by the way, he's a double-digit scorer, 13 points per game, not just a defensive player.
Mm-hmm.
So you got Jaime Jaquez and Tiger Campbell going to have to carry a bigger load. Amari Bailey's going to have to step up. I think UCLA's still got enough to win the West, but once you get to the Final Four, it could be a different story. But I'm going to stick with the Bruins to win the West, even though I think that was a big setback losing Jalen Clark.
No question. And Wes, let me correct myself. Actually, UCLA is the betting favorite as the 2 seed, not Kansas, which is surprising as the 1 seed here.
Yeah, this is the toughest region, I think, of all the 4 regions. If you look, and if you, especially like the Ken Palm rankings, I'll just use that as an example. 5 of the top 11 teams. I know Matt says St. Mary's is overrated, and he might be right, but they're number 11, nevertheless, in Ken Palm. UCLA 2, UConn 4, Gonzaga 8, Kansas 9. Kansas got sent out here to Las Vegas. I don't think they'll mind that, assuming they advance in that second round over Arkansas or Illinois, but they're out here to, kind of, because Las Vegas, I think, a first-time regional site. You want kind of a blue blood out here. So you get Kansas and UCLA, potentially Gonzaga as well. UConn, another team that has won, even though that's far away, has won a national championship. But I am going to go with the UConn Huskies, the number 4 seed, to come out here. And look, I know that they didn't play very well in the Big East tournament. Actually, they played solid. They still had a chance to beat Marquette 5 times on Friday night. Just couldn't make a shot. But I think this team got organized. They had a bad January. Remember, they were 14-0 heading into the new year, and it's like, oh, this team's a wagon. Mm-hmm. Then all of a sudden, they were 5-6 in Big East play, and they lost, I think, like 6 of 8. Yeah. And then that's where I bet a little 30-1 to win the title on UConn. People preseason could have got 50 or more. But UConn, I thought, played very well. They won 8 of their last 9 in the regular season, won a game in the Big East tournament. This is a team that rebounds the hell out of the ball. Number 1 in offensive rebounding rate, 39.2%, 6th in adjusted OE, 18th in adjusted defensive efficiency, one of 4 teams in the top 20 in both categories. They take away the 3, only allow 30%. Really good defensively. They just don't give up much defensively, and they're so physical and athletic. I think the Huskies are coming out of the West region.
All right, so Wes has got the Huskies. They are 4-1 to come out of this region. Matt's got UCLA. They are plus 275 to come out again. Kansas, even though as the 1 seed, they're the second betting favorite right now to come out of what feels like a very toss-up type division, certainly to come out of that bracket. All right, gentlemen, when we come back, we'll go over those Final 4 picks, and then you got to give me one. Who's cutting down the nets? That is next here on VSiN Tonight. We roll on the special edition of VSiN Tonight with the guys from VSiN Tonight. Matt Youmans, Wes Reynolds. Gentlemen, we're down to the brass tacks. You've given out your Final 4. Now we got to navigate the national semifinals and then ultimately cut down the net. Matt, tell us your Final 4 and who you see in the national championship and who ultimately cuts it down.
All right, Super Dave. By the way, great job running the point tonight on the show.
I just assist to you guys. That's all I do.
Well, when you're looking for teams that can reach the Final Four, you got to have a good point guard.
You do.
Right? That's why I'm going to go with Houston here. I think Marcus Sasser is I'm not concerned about his health, even though Wes says Kelvin Sampson might not always tell the truth, and he's right about that. I think by the time Sasser gets back on the floor, and it might not be until the second round, he's going to be ready to go. But the big thing about Houston, it's an elite defensive team. If you look at the Ken Pomeroy ratings, the Cougars are 11th in offensive efficiency and 4th in defensive efficiency. And, even when you have an off offensive game, that defense can win for you. And that's the thing about Houston. We talked about the easy path that the Cougars have in the Midwest region. I wanted to pick a long shot here, but it's undeniable that Houston's got the path and the defense and the veteran guards to do it. And Kelvin Sampson, like him or not, he's a coach who can navigate a team through a region like this and get them to the Final Four and win it. He's been there and done that before. So I've got Houston in the Final Four, opposing UCLA out of the West. And then on the other half of the bracket, Alabama and Duke.
Oof.
And so I've got 2 number 1 seeds, a 2 seed, and a 5. Now, I love to pick upsets, and I love to bet underdogs. But the deeper you go into projecting brackets, we always become a little chalk heavy. So I don't love it that I've got 2 number 1 seeds here. But Wes, Alabama and Houston have such easy paths to the Final Four. I couldn't find a team to knock them off. I think you found a team to knock off the Tide. I've got Houston over Duke in the title game. Wes loves storylines like this. A year ago, Hubert Davis stepped in for a legend, led North Carolina to the title game, and lost to Kansas. This year, John Shire steps in for a legend, leads Duke to the title game, and loses to Houston.
Wow.
That's how I think the storyline plays out.
Duke all the way to the final, but they come up short against Houston. Hopefully the same fate won't happen to UNC because they didn't even make the tournament.
You know what could also happen? Duke could get knocked off by Oral Roberts in the first round. But, hey, for now, that's my story. I'm sticking with it.
All right, Houston and Duke in the final. Wes, do you see it the same way, or what do you have coming out here, and who's ultimately going to win this thing?
We'll have one common Final Four team, which we'll get to momentarily. I'll start upper left, though, in the South region. I think Alabama makes the Elite Eight. And, look, I think that, rightfully probably the number one seed overall, and third in defensive efficiency, fourth in tempo, first in effective field goal percentage. A lot to like about this team. This team's freaky athletic. Brandon Miller, going to be a one and done. He can do it all. He can score inside, outside, can handle the ball, can defend. So he's not long for Tuscaloosa after this tournament. But if you look at Alabama, one of the things that concerns me is they're going to get to a point. They are the 8th highest three-point rate team in the country. However, they're 186th nationally in shooting it. They I believe, took 93s in the SEC tournament and, had 3 easy double-digit wins, made 33 of them. So just a little bit over a third in terms of making threes. And I worry against the right defensive team that they're going to go cold from the three. And these guys, still a relatively young team, they might panic in one of these games. And a team that I think that they could do that against is the Creighton Blue Jays.
Wow.
In the Elite Eight, who I have coming out of that bottom half of the region, and I actually have going to the Final Four. Creighton, by the way, 9th best in the country in terms of allowing the least three-point attempts at 29.8% of shots. Opponent shots are from three. Creighton has some long guards, too, and some long wings. Trey Alexander, 6'4", Arthur Kaluma, 6'7", Bayer Shireman, 6'7", as well. Ryan Nemhard, the younger brother of Andrew Nemhard, runs the point here. And then you got the big guy, Kalkbrenner, down low, who maybe can get Badiako in foul trouble for Alabama. So I like Creighton here. I think that they're finally kind of getting their legs under them. I know they were bad against Xavier in the Big East tournament and got blown out, but I'm going to say the Creighton Blue Jays, who ranked 28th offensive efficiency, 15th defensive efficiency. There are 10 teams, by the way, that have that rank under 50. Alabama, certainly one of them, also Creighton. So Creighton coming out of the South. And then the ultimate contrarian number one, who nobody has advancing out of the East region, it seems to me, and that's the Purdue Boilermakers. And one of the things, look, every team has warts. Every team has weaknesses. There's not a 2012 Kentucky team that was dominant, like with AD and Michael Kidd-Gilchrist and company. There's not that type of team in college basketball this year. So I do like Purdue. I know that teams are going to pressure them, but I think that they could be ready for it here. They execute so well in the half court. They don't foul. I think number one. They offensive rebound, and it's not just Zach Edey either. Mason Gillis and Caleb Furst, a couple other guys. So this team has, I think, a lot more skill than they're given credit for. And I don't think that they're really, until they maybe get Marquette in the Elite Eight, they're not really out-athleted. Maybe Memphis a little bit more, but I think Purdue is kind of the smarter team and the one that I would trust more if the game grinds down to a halt. So I have the Purdue Boilermakers coming out of the East, still 7th in offensive efficiency. And then we go to the right side of the bracket. I think the team that has the easiest draw of a number one is the Houston Cougars. And number one seed, I think you're going to get Houston playing in Houston. You're going to get Jim Nance on the call in the Final Four for his alma mater. Speaking of storylines,
I knew that was coming. I knew that was coming.
You know I go down Narrative Street.
Absolutely.
You walk down Narrative Street with me, man.
This is also Jim Nance's last Final Four.
Right?
This is it.
Yeah, okay.
It is. You just know it's going to be a boisterous hello, friends.
No, it
when
is.
He's introducing the Houston Cougars. Also does the PA, by the way, at the Final Four for the introduction. So I think Houston comes out. I think Sasser is going to be fine in terms of health-wise. This team defensively.
The Jim Nance angle.
With a tear in his eye.
Hey, you walk down Narrative Street with me, man, you got to look both ways. But Houston, by the way, 343rd in tempo, so this is a team that can grind.
Yeah.
More athletic teams. If they get, teams that want to run in their draw, they can grind you to a halt. Number 3 in effective field goal percentage, number 4 in offensive rebounds, second best in defending the 3. They will chase you off the 3-point line. This is a veteran team. They got a lot of long, rangy guys. They go about 8 deep or so. So Sampson has the confidence in his bench if somebody gets in foul trouble or if there's an injury like there was a Marcus Sasser in the American tournament. So Houston advances, and then UConn advances out of that tough West region, the toughest region by far of all 4. I like UConn. I like a team that's physical and that can, get on the glass. Sonogo is a guy that can take over a game. You need that player to take over a game, I think, and UConn has that with Sonogo. So we go Creighton, Purdue, Houston, and UConn. I like to play that angle, too, where you have 2 teams from the same conference. I think a lot of people are going to go Texas and Kansas out of the Big 12, predictably so, because they were the best conference in America. But no Big 12 teams for me in the Final Four. Creighton, Purdue, Houston, and UConn. I think we're going to get Purdue and UConn in the national championship game. And the UConn Huskies are going to cut down the nets in Houston, just like they did against Butler in the last decade.
That's fascinating. So again, you guys are going against the chalk here a little bit with some of your Final Four selections. Certainly, Creighton, I believe, is a 6 seed to come out. That would be the lowest, if you will, of your picks, gentlemen. Very quickly, I'm going to be with you on the East here, Wes. I am picking Purdue to come out of the East. Out of the South, I do like Arizona as a 2 seed to come out there. I love Gonzaga, and I know Mark Few's probably going to let me down, but I did take the Zags against Houston, and I do have Gonzaga and Purdue, and I can't believe I'm going to say this because, Wes, I think I said this to you this time last year. Don't let me pick Purdue again. I'm picking Purdue again. I'm going back to it 10-1 right now to cut down the net, but I'm just National Player of the Year, and Zach Edey, I just think if they don't turn it over, and I know they can turn it over sometimes because their guard play is not great, I like Purdue this year.
So 2 national champions from Indiana, Purdue on the men's side and Indiana on the women's side.
And thank you for Danielle Var for joining us as well. She differs a little bit. She does pick South Carolina to cut down the nets in the women's bracket. Gentlemen, that was a lot of fun for the last 3 hours. So again, you're going to go UConn as a 4 seed to win the whole thing. And Matt, again, your final is?
Houston over Duke.
There it is. You have a 5 seed in Duke and the 1 seed in Houston. Don't go anywhere because the Greg Peterson experience is next. Of course, he's going to talk a lot more about the big dance and also some of the little smaller dances there. The NIT and the CBI, going to break that down from every possible gambling angle. Thanks to producer Steph for doing a great job for the last 3 hours putting this show together. We hope you like this special edition of VSiN Tonight.
Visit VSiN.com to get current odds, listen for free, find showtimes, and download VSiN sports betting podcasts.